Story 1. My sister hooked up with my BF and played the cancer card. Am I the jerk for not having a relationship with her anymore? My 25F father married my stepsister's 23F mother when I was 4 and she was 3. We've lived together most of our lives, and in our family, she and I were extremely close. She developed cancer when she was 14 and was sick for about 2 years. She has since made a full recovery. During that time, my parents became understandably overprotective. They also asked a lot of me. I quit my extracurriculars so I could get a job. The money went towards her medical bills, and so I could drive her to appointments. I didn't go to dances, and any fun activities I did needed to include her. I did almost all of this willingly, the exception being having to quit my high school volleyball team. I did throw a bit of a tantrum about that but was swiftly punished, and I think having one emotional breakdown was pretty chill given the circumstances. Anyhow, I go to college and meet my ex, we'll call him Ben, when I'm a junior. We fall in love, blah blah blah. He and I move in together when we graduate, so we've been living together for about 3 years. We were serious until July, when I walked into my bedroom and saw him effing my sister. I broke it off, tears were shed, he moved out, etc. My sister apologized at first but then backed off. I thought she was giving me space, but last week she called and asked if we could meet up. She told me that she and Ben were in love and were just telling me as a courtesy before they started posting photos online. Distraught, I left her in the restaurant by herself and did not pay my portion of the bill. She later Venmo'd me asking for the money. She told my parents, who then called me to their house, telling me how disappointed in me they are for not supporting my sister's relationship with Ben. They brought up the fact that because she had cancer as a teenager, she never learned proper social etiquette and has a hard time meeting people. I don't buy this, in part because I've seen her socialize just fine, and since we spent a good chunk of the time she was sick together, that would also mean that I should have bad social skills as well by that logic. They then told me that if I don't accept my sister and Ben's relationship, they may have to go no contact with me. I reminded them that I'm also their daughter, and they should understand my point of view, but they are adamant that this is about me being jealous of her. For the record, I'm not jealous of her. I'm not upset that Ben picked her over me. I'm sad about the end of the relationship and do feel betrayed, but Lord knows that I don't want to be with a cheater. What I'm upset about is the fact that my sister chose Ben over me, that she slept with Ben knowing he and I were in a long-term, committed relationship, and continues to be with him knowing how much it hurts me. Now, no one in my immediate family is talking to me, and I'm getting messages from aunts and uncles and cousins telling me that I'm and a selfish edit. Thank you everyone so much for your comments. This has gotten more attention than I expected, and I'm having trouble keeping up, so if I don't say thank you, then thank you. I've been given a lot of food for thought. TBH, while I've had moments where I've been resentful or upset about my teenage years, I've always thought that I did the right thing for my sister and for my family, and that time wasn't all miserable. I was very close to my sister, and we made things as fun as we could, but I didn't think of it as an abdication of my parents' responsibilities or that they were doing wrong by me, which many of you pointed out. I definitely have a lot to think about. Thank you again for making me feel less crazy about all of this. Update 1. Sometimes you can only laugh. Just got off of the phone with my cousin who saw this post and said he could explain a few things. I asked him why he was on Reddit instead of school. He asked me why I was on Reddit instead of work, and I said to Shay. He told me that after my conversation with my mom, she went to his house and talked to my aunt, and here's the deal. Turns out my sister is not only in a relationship with Ben, but 4 months pregnant, which means she and Ben were effing for longer than I had even guessed. Apparently, my parents are so adamant that I forgive her because I'm already ruining their experience of their first grandchild. That's right, I'm less important than my stepmom posting ultrasounds to Facebook. This is where we're at. Anyhow, I called out of work sick the rest of the day, and I'm gonna drink a lot of alcohol, and then start thinking about what I'm gonna do. Update 2. Am I the jerk for not accepting my sister's relationship with my ex despite her having cancer as a teenager? October 6, 2021. I was asked for an update, and thus here I am. 2 things to clarify before I update. I didn't have a shitty childhood. The favoritism started when my sister was diagnosed. I moved out soon after and have been pretty independent since then. Not saying that how my parents treated me during those years were a-okay. But I wasn't Cinderella. I did not drink myself into oblivion. I had 2 white wine spritzers, but I appreciate the concern from folks. Anyhow, the update. I got in touch with my sister and asked her to meet up again at a park. No bill involved. I asked her if she was pregnant, and she told me the truth. She said she wanted us to still be in each other's lives and that she wanted me to be in her babies. A Redditor, and I forget who, I'm sorry, mentioned that she may ask me to be the godmother, and the person was correct. But as many of you pointed out, if I didn't cut her off, I just become her bank and daycare employee. So I told her I could no longer be in her life, and I left her crying on a park bench and felt like the shittiest person in the world. I emailed my parents and told them how betrayed I felt and that I'd be cutting off contact with them. 2. To my stepmom's credit, she apologized. She explained that she never thought my sister would live to have kids and that she let her emotion over to get the better of her. Understandable. My dad said nothing, which is honestly what sucked the worst about all of this. Ben tried messaging me from a burner account for the first time since the breakup, but I blocked him without reading it. I didn't go nuclear and post the story to Facebook as some suggested, but I sent an email to the extended family members who I care about. I explained the situation and how I'd be distancing myself from my family. Some have made it an us versus them situation, and as much as I appreciate the support, feeling like I'm in some valiant battle just makes me more tired, so I haven't been talking to much of anyone in my family. I feel lonely and crappy, but I think I made the right decision. Anyhow, not the most exciting update in the world, but hopefully everyone knows that I'm not dead. I do really appreciate the support I've gotten. It made me smile during a really shitty time. And hey, if anyone in the greater Boston area wants an extra guest at Thanksgiving, let me know. Update 3, November 24th, 2021. Hi, some people were interested in an update. So I am spending Thanksgiving with a friend and her family, so I won't be alone. Thanks to everyone who offered to host me. It was so sweet. I'm still not in touch with my family, but I know that Ben and my sister are having problems. I know this because he showed up at my place and cried for 3 hours. I'm going to go to New Mexico in April. Planning is underway. Happy Thanksgiving to those who celebrate. I think my 26-year-old ex-26M sabotages my relationship with my new ex-27M. January 1st, 2022. To make a long story short, my 26F breakup last summer with ex-126M was volcanic. He's now expecting a baby with my stepsister within the next 6 weeks or so. Since I found out about the pregnancy, he's tried to get in touch with me 6 times through email, text, burner accounts, has tried to get mutual friends to talk to me for him, and showed up to my place once. The latter was the only time I humored him. He told me he was sorry, he loves me, he doesn't want to be with my stepsister, and wants to get back together with me. I told him tough titties, he made his bed and now he's got to lay in it with her. I haven't dated much since July because of my life's implosion, but in November, a friend from college messaged me out of the blue. We hadn't talked in a long time. He, 27M, referred to as X2 for the rest of the post, and X1 were good friends but had a falling out over something fantasy football related the year after we graduated, and I stopped talking to him out of solidarity or whatever. Anyhow, we go on a date, we click, we go on a few more dates, we become exclusive in early December. I was feeling really hopeful about this until this morning. I was supposed to meet X2 at a New Year's party last night. He got there before I left the house and texted me saying that X1 was at the party and asked whether I still wanted to come. I declined and went to another friend's house and had a pretty good time. I tried calling X2 at midnight, but he didn't pick up. I didn't think much about it. Anyhow, I go to bed late, and when I wake up this morning, I have a message from X2 saying we're done. I couldn't even respond because he blocked me everywhere. I talked to a friend who was at the party the exes were at last night, and he said the two of them had spent a good chunk of time chatting with each other, but he didn't know what they were talking about. I'm not close with anyone else who was at the party, so I don't really have anyone else to ask. Like, okay, it was a 2-month-old relationship, I'm sad, but I'm not bereft, but the paranoid part of my mind is really concerned that X1 said something that resulted in X2 becoming X2. X2 has made it abundantly apparent that he doesn't want to talk to me again, and I don't want to push that boundary, but I'm so confused. I could contact X1, but I get the feeling that will open a floodgate of drama. I could also try talking to other mutual friends to see if they've heard anything, but I also don't really want to spread this as a rumor if it wasn't true. I don't know. I'm at a loss. Any advice here? I'm spiraling, thinking that my ex is going to try to ruin every relationship I have for the rest of my life. I'm beginning to think that there's something wrong with me. January 16th, 2022. My last 2 partners have cheated on me. The first was a very serious relationship. We lived together, we talked about marriage and buying a house. He even took 2 pictures of us as kids and photoshopped them together to show what our kids might look like one day. The result was terrifying but hilarious, and I had it as the background of my phone for a month. I walked in on him sleeping with my stepsister. Now she's pregnant, due in the near future, and he's with her. I know he's not happy. I know he regrets what he did. I know that he loved me, and none of that stopped him from effing my stepsister in our bed. I've spent so long now being upset at her and writing him off as just a bad decision that I wasted time on, but now I find myself mourning what we had. My stepsister and I grew up together and have loved each other most of our lives, so it felt like that was the betrayal, but he and I chose each other out of all the people on the earth. We looked each other in the eyes, committed to each other, and made the promise to stay faithful, and he lied, and he lied, and he lied, and he lied, and he let me go on loving him while he lied. Then a few months ago, another guy comes into my life, and for the first time in ages, I felt hopeful. I thought to myself that maybe I could actually move on and live my life. I wasn't in love with him, but he was the kind of man I thought I could fall in love with. We were exclusive for about a month before we made the decision to be exclusive. I told him everything that had happened with my first ex and told him that I could never be with another cheater. I wake up on New Year's Day to a text saying we're done. When I tried getting in touch, I found out he'd block me everywhere. Turns out he met someone at a New Year's party and hooked up with her instead of telling me. He just blocked me everywhere and sent a lackey to message me a few weeks later with a real story and a half-assed apology. I want to be angry, and maybe a part of me is, but as I'm sitting here, I'm just thinking, what if it's me? What if I'm just not lovable? What if it's never going to happen for me? The thing is, I've been a pretty confident person. I went through as a kid, but I got through it and grew stronger. I'm pretty good looking, though I've admittedly put on a little weight in the past couple weeks. I've been told that I'm fun. I hold down a good job and make decent money. I also live my life according to my values. I've always put my family and partner first because that's just how I believed it should be done, and I thought that I would be prioritized in turn. I've lost most of my family because they'd rather have my stepsister's baby in their life than me. My friends have been fair weather for the most part, and I know that I'm a laughingstock in my friend group as much as they pretend to pity me to my face. I feel the little spark I've always had fading. I don't chime in on conversations anymore. I've stopped putting on cute clothes when I go out. I don't plan anything, so I don't have anything to be disappointed about. Soon I'll be the same age as my mom was when she died. I never knew her, but I've always loved her, thinking of her watching over me. I don't remember the funeral, but it was one of those funerals where there wasn't a dry eye in the house. She lit up a room. People tell me she was a good woman. In my worst moments, I wonder what it would be like if I died right now. Would anyone cry? Would anyone care? Would anyone come? Anyhow, sorry for writing a novella. Just not sure what to do anymore and who to talk to. If you read all this, thank you. Update 4, May 30th, 2022. Hello folks. I thought that things on the internet died after a couple days, so color me surprised when I still get requests for updates on the regular. Long story short, I don't have much to update. I didn't end up going to New Mexico because I conveniently got COVID the week before I was supposed to go. The baby was had, but I have had no contact with the baby or their parents. I've done a pretty good job of insulating myself from news about them / the rest of my family. My life is pretty much the same as it was. So sorry to the folks who are hoping I have some kind of happy ending to slap onto all of this. Things are improving just because time barrels on, and you can grow numb to most anything given enough time and distance, but I've had no grand revelations, have not met the love of my life, nor had elaborate revenge on those who have wronged me. I'm going to Europe for the first time in October though, so that's exciting. I will say this. While I appreciate the solidarity and sometimes colorful language used to describe my sister and Ben and my DMs, I wholeheartedly ask everyone reading this not to waste their energy on hating them. They're now parents to a newborn, and regardless of the things they've done in the past, I hope that they can come together as a happy family and raise their child in a loving, healthy home. Hating them doesn't do anything for anyone, including ourselves, in the long run. Anyhow, that's the non-update update. I promise that if I meet the love of my life at the top of the Eiffel Tower, or more likely stuffing my face with waffles and rouge, I will post another update. Until then, you can assume that I'm living, trying my best, and am very appreciative of all of the people out there in the world who have read this saga and reached out with support, even if I have not had the energy to respond to everyone. Update October 5th, 2022. Hi, just wanted to give a more recent, less depressing update. I am currently in my hotel room in Paris eating a creme brulee in bed, reading a romance novel, and about to go to sleep early. All is well. New update starts here. Howdy, it's been a while. 9th of September 2023. Hello, so it's been a minute, but I still get messages from folks asking how I've been, and I'm up too early and a little bored, so I thought I'd give you the answer. I'm good, made a lot of really positive changes in my life, and I am in a much better place physically and mentally than I was last year. To answer some specific questions, no, I'm not in contact with my family. The last straw was in spring 2022. My dad emailed me to ask if we could get lunch and talk. Me having always harbored the secret and foolish hope that we'd reconcile and go back to normal, agreed. I arrived at the restaurant and waited 2 hours. When my server gave me a free dessert on the house with a pitying look, I called it and went home. Later I got an email from my stepmom, which I'm sure was full of excuses, but I didn't read it. But the really positive outcome of that was that made me realize that I needed to move far away and not come back, which I did. I'd always been really scared to move away from my family, but since I don't have one anymore, I ended up somewhat spontaneously moving halfway across the country. The spontaneous move was stressful and expensive, but I can now say that moving was one of the best decisions of my life. I ended up reconnecting with an old friend and falling in with her friend group, who are the loveliest people. I've never felt safer or more supported, and I feel so lucky to have them in my life, and it's less humid here. That's a big win. One of our friends is a counselor who helped me find a therapist that I really click with, and it took a few tries and a therapist who didn't immediately want to do CBT with me, which just isn't my thing, but I found someone I really connect with. I'm now doing IFS therapy, and it has really changed my relationship with myself and helped me realize all of the hurt and pain I've been holding on to and start to heal. So y'all were right, and I needed to go to therapy. Give yourselves a pat on the back for that one. I also got diagnosed with depression, and I'm taking medicine for that. It was a bit hard to stomach as someone who always saw her value as being the happy person who takes care of everyone all the time, but it turns out that sometimes when your needs aren't met as a kid, you end up becoming the happy person who takes care of everyone all the time because you're afraid that if you show the slightest bit of unhappiness, you won't be loved anymore, and that's up. I also met a guy, and I know you're all saying, Papaya, no, your decision-making around men cannot be trusted, but I assure you that he's different. Instead of rolling his eyes when I'm feeling off, he'll either just quietly lay on the couch with me or go for a walk, or he'll say really dirty things to me in his spot on Kermit the Frog voice until I'm laughing so hard I can't focus on anything else, and bonus, he's far too busy painting D&D minis to find the time to cheat on me, so I'm not even worried about that. I did have to invest in a somewhat elaborate Renaissance fair costume, which is not something I had imagined for myself, but I'm having a great time. I'm gonna marry this dude someday. As for Ben and my sister, as far as I know, they're still together. Every so often she tries to get in touch with some manner of burner account, but I ignore all of it. I'm still bummed that I'm not going to be a part of my siblings' life, and I do honestly still really miss my family, but I know this is right for me. Sorry I don't have any salacious info on them since I know you're all really here to hear about their karmic downfall or whatever, but on my end, things are good, better than they were before I found out I was being cheated on. My current life is built on real contentment, not fear disguised to shallow happiness. It's not perfect, and I have a lot of problems that I'm working through, but I'm proud of myself, and I think my mom would be too. So that's the update. I think it's going to be my last one, at least on this account. Thanks Reddit for supporting me and making me smile through some of the worst, weirdest points in my life. May you too be blessed with internet strangers who cheer you on and offer to sabotage the lives of the people who do you wrong. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, If you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. Husband secretly invited his sister on our honeymoon behind my back even when I refused, so I ditched him at the airport and went on a solo trip instead. Hi, so my husband Jacob, 30M, and I, 27F, got married about a week ago, and yesterday we were supposed to leave for our honeymoon. But I ended up taking a flight to someplace else altogether because his younger sister showed up at the airport, and apparently Jacob was in on this the whole time and actually invited her to come along with us. For context, his sister Angie, 26F, recently went through a terrible divorce with her ex-husband and has been very torn up about it for the past couple of months. Angie and her ex had been high school sweethearts and got married as soon as they could. They spent several beautiful years together until about a year ago, when Angie found out that he had been having an affair for months with one of his coworkers. She tried to make it work with him even after that, but after several sessions of marriage counseling, her ex was the one who filed for divorce because he claimed that he just couldn't do this anymore. She begged him to stay, but in spite of that, he left and they got divorced. She received everything in the divorce, the house and the cars and a hefty settlement. But it wasn't enough for her because she wanted her marriage to stay intact and didn't care about anything else. I thought it was really sad, and I honestly felt bad for her because she was a sweet person, and she didn't deserve it. To be honest, nobody deserves to live like that, and I had witnessed firsthand how depressed she was in the months following the divorce. I wanted to help her out, but all I could offer her were words of consolation. I wanted to involve her in the wedding so that she would stay busy and distracted, but Jacob told me that he didn't think it was such a good idea because being part of a wedding like ours would just remind her that her own marriage had fallen apart, and he made a good point. So I decided to only stick to checking up on her once in a while. Angie and I were never close friends, but we got along well. In fact, I think I could say that about most of Jacob's family. I wouldn't say that I was close to any of them, but we got along well, and I never had a problem with any of them so far. But then, a day after my wedding, my mother-in-law Nora, 55F, called me up and said that she wanted me to invite Angie to accompany us on our honeymoon. Jacob and I had been planning for this for a really long time, and I think I had been more excited about the honeymoon than the wedding, if I'm being really honest. I love traveling, and so does Jacob, and we love mountain ranges in particular. So we had a whole tour of the Alps planned. We had taken about 3 weeks off from work, and we have been really looking forward to this ever since we planned it. Now, I did feel bad for Angie, and I would have been willing to do whatever it took to cheer her up, except for this. Nora told me that even Angie loved to travel, and she believed that going on a trip with us would help her with the pain, but Angie wouldn't be willing to come along unless I invited her personally. So she wanted me to ask her and make it seem like I wanted her to come along, but truth be told, I didn't want her to come with us. For starters, this was supposed to be our honeymoon, and I don't think it's appropriate for family to accompany the newlyweds on their honeymoon. And secondly, I was really looking forward to this since the weeks leading up to the wedding had been really busy and hectic for both of us. Jacob and I had specifically taken time off so we could travel and have some quality time with just each other. It didn't seem fair for Nora to ask me to give all that up for the sake of Angie's happiness. So with a heavy heart, I had to tell Nora that I couldn't do so because it wouldn't be fair to either of us. I expected her to understand that this was supposed to be our honeymoon, and I didn't want Angie tagging along. She didn't fight with me at the time, but tried to convince me that this could do her world of good, and I would be doing them all a huge favor by inviting her to come with us. She told me that she was going to cover the cost of Angie traveling with us, and I didn't even have to worry about the money. All that I had to do was invite her and be there for her. She was pushing it really hard, but even then, I stood my ground and I firmly declined it because it was not fair to either of us. I could understand that it was difficult for her to deal with a divorce, but she couldn't just tag along with us and expect us to give up our honeymoon just so we could cheer her up. Besides, it wasn't even Angie trying to convince me to let her come along. Nora believed that it would be good for her to travel with us. Had Angie approached me, I might have even considered saying yes, but I didn't think that she wanted to come along with us either because she hadn't said anything of the sort, and even when I had mentioned the honeymoon to her, she hadn't shown any interest in wanting to come with us and just told me to have fun. That was it. So after a few minutes of conversation and arguing, Nora decided to drop it, and it didn't come up after that. After that conversation, I spoke to Jacob about what his mother had said, but strangely enough, he didn't have any reaction to it. He just asked me what I had told her, and I told him that I had said no. When I said that, he just grunted, and that was it. No further discussion about it. In hindsight, I probably should have read more into it, but at the time, I was just too excited to start packing for our honeymoon, so I didn't pay much mind to his reaction. In the week between the wedding and the honeymoon, we were busy at work because we were trying to wrap everything up before we left, so we didn't have a chance to meet anybody from his family, and nobody tried to get in touch with us either. Jacob and I would talk about the honeymoon and our trip occasionally whenever we were at home this last week, but he didn't say a single word about what he had been planning until the very last minute. I had no idea that he had invited Angie to come with us, and I only found out when we were at the airport and Angie and Nora showed up yesterday. Jacob and I left about 3 hours before our flight was scheduled at the airport. While we were waiting outside and taking our bags out of the cabs, I suddenly noticed Angie and Nora approaching us. I tried to give everybody involved the benefit of the doubt until I noticed that Angie had her bags with her. I knew then that she was definitely not here to just say goodbye to us or drop us off. She yelled, "Surprise!" really loudly and then hugged me when she was close enough, but I was still trying to process what was going on because I think I'd been very clear about my feelings on this with both Jacob and his mother. However, despite what I had said, here she was, seemingly ready to accompany us on our honeymoon. When Angie realized that I looked confused and not happy when I saw her, her smile faded, and she asked me if I was not happy to see her. I didn't even know what to say, so I just turned to Jacob for an explanation. I wanted him to tell me that he had no idea about any of this and that Nora was the one who was responsible for this, but instead, he told me that after I had informed him about the phone call and the conversation that I had with Nora the other day, he couldn't help but think about how nice it would be for Angie to come with us on the trip and have a good time to distract her. The reason he had not reacted that day was that he had gone behind my back a couple of hours later and told Angie that apparently I was the one who had suggested this idea and invited her to come with us on the trip to surprise me. And he was right about one thing. I was definitely surprised, but not in a good way. I thought it was sneaky and selfish of him to go behind my back to do the one thing that I had told him that I didn't want. I like Angie, like I said, she's a really nice person and I like her, but I like a lot of people. I'm not going to take all of them with me on my honeymoon just because it would be a nice thing to do. I don't have to do things just because it's a sweet thing to do, especially when it comes to something as intimate and special as a honeymoon. After Jacob told me that this was his idea and he was the one who had invited her to come along with us, I sort of snapped at him right in front of Angie and his mother and told him that this was simply unacceptable. I knew that Angie would feel bad about it, but that was the thing on my mind at that moment. I told him that he had gone behind my back, and I couldn't forgive him for that because it had barely even been a week into our marriage, and he was already being sneaky and lying to me. He tried to pass this off as something really small and insignificant, but he thought I'd been planning for this honeymoon for ages, and I had made it very clear to him that I was really looking forward to this, even on the day that I had told him about the suggestion that Nora had made and that I didn't like the idea of asking Angie to come along just because she was depressed. I think I had been very clear about my feelings on this, so this was not petty or insignificant in the slightest to me. I felt like he had betrayed me and I was extremely upset, but he simply refused to look at it like that, and he said that I was making a bigger deal out of it than was necessary and completely blowing this out of proportion. He told me that Angie would be paying for herself, she would stay in a separate room, and she would only join us for certain activities, but we wouldn't be together all the time. However, that was not enough for me because at the end of the day, she was still going to be accompanying us on our honeymoon, and I don't know about everybody else, but I really think that's weird. Had this been any other trip, like a normal weekend trip, I don't think I would have had a problem, but asking my sister-in-law to come with me on my honeymoon was where I drew the line. After a bit of fighting and arguing, I decided that I had had enough, and since Jacob refused to take accountability and accept that he had done something messed up, I thought that I was better off going away on my own. I had already taken 3 weeks off from work, and I wasn't going to let that go to waste, so I dropped the argument and went inside the airport after telling him not to follow me. But of course, he did follow me. However, I didn't want him around me at that particular point in time, so I actually had to yell at him to stop following me around and said that I didn't want him anywhere near me or I really would report him for harassment. That stopped him from coming after me, but I could tell from his face that he was really upset and hurt by what I said. I didn't care because I was pissed off and I just wanted to be away from him. So once I had yelled at him and he had stopped following me, I decided to get myself a ticket and hopped on to the next flight to Miami. I was really lucky because it didn't require me to wait for long, and I was on the flight before Jacob even had a chance to change his mind about following me. Once I landed in Miami, I decided to turn on my phone and check for texts, and I realized that my inbox was full of messages from Jacob, Angie, and Nora. All of them seemed to be really apologetic for whatever had happened, but the only apology that really stood out was the one that I received from Angie. She told me that when a few days ago Jacob had visited her and told her that I had been suggesting that she accompany us on our honeymoon, she could barely even believe it. Apparently, she was even about to ask me if I was actually okay with it because she didn't want to be intruding, but Jacob was the one who told her not to ask me because he wanted it to be a surprise for me. He had laid it on thick and made her believe that this was my idea, but after our fight at the airport, it had become clear to her that this was all planned by her mother and her brother, and she said that she was sorry on their behalf because what they had done was really stupid, and she didn't blame me for reacting the way that I did because if she was in my place, she probably would have done the same thing. Her apology seemed genuine, and I told her that it was okay. I could understand that she was going through something really difficult, and she wasn't even involved in any of this, so I forgave her. But with Jacob and Nora, it was a different story altogether. Jacob was apologizing, but he was also trying hard to make me seem like the bad guy here, and the same applied to Nora as well. They were trying to push me into believing that they only had good intentions and didn't think that I would get so upset about this. They claimed that they had believed that I would eventually be okay with this because I always acted like I liked Angie, and I do. I really like her, but like I said, that doesn't mean that I want her around on my honeymoon, and if they can't accept it, then I don't know what to tell them. Now I know for a fact that I'm not in the wrong here, but I still kind of feel bad. And it doesn't help that ever since I landed here, I've been fighting with Jacob non-stop. It's because he just doesn't want to accept that he messed up by going behind my back and that this was not the right thing to do. I understand and I really respect the fact that he loves his family so much and is willing to make sacrifices for them, but I think it's extremely unfair to expect me to make the same sacrifices for his family, and not to mention I'm his family as well now and he owes me certain things. It just feels like my happiness doesn't mean as much to him as his family's. And it feels really petty to make it seem like a competition, but that's how it appears. If he actually valued my happiness as much as he valued his sister's, maybe he wouldn't have gone behind my back and done the one thing that I had asked him not to. We have been fighting, and it's been really bad because we've just been married for a week, and we've gotten off on the wrong foot already. We have been together for almost 7 years before this, and I feel like crap right now because something like this has never happened before. We have always had a relatively normal relationship, and yes, of course, like any other couple, we have also had fights, but none of this magnitude, and I just don't know how to deal with this. He insists that his heart was in the right place, and that I really need to understand that. He claims that while having Angie accompany us on the honeymoon wasn't going to ruin anything for me, it would have meant a great deal to her and maybe even saved her from getting worse down the road, and I can't explain to him that having Angie accompany us on the honeymoon would have kind of ruined it for me without sounding like a really terrible person and the kind of wife who wants to separate her husband from her family. But I promise you guys that's not the case. I know logically I am not the bad guy here, but all the fighting with my husband has made me feel like I'm losing my mind, and I have absolutely no idea how to go ahead. Aita for leaving my husband behind at the airport and canceling our honeymoon when I realized that he had invited his sister to accompany us on our trip. Date 1. So I'm still in Miami, and I have been traveling a lot. This is my first time here, and a lot of you guys suggested a couple of places that I should go see, and I've been doing exactly that to take my mind off of things. I still haven't been able to sort things out with my husband because Jacob is being very stubborn. He is sticking to whatever he believes, and he honestly thinks that having Angie be with us on the honeymoon wouldn't have been any different. He is so convinced of it that it took me all the comments here to make me realize that I wasn't going crazy and that he was being unreasonable. I can't understand why he doesn't get it when even Angie herself has acknowledged that it would have been weird. He has been texting me, but I have just given up on trying to explain things to him. I had been arguing for a while, but I completely wasted the last few days that I have been here staying in my hotel room and arguing with him. I have spent enough of my time trying to make him see sense, but I can't help him if he refuses to acknowledge the obvious. The worst part of this is that I can't even fully enjoy myself because in the back of my mind, I keep thinking about Jacob and what I'm going to say to him when I go back. I can't avoid him forever, and we are literally married, so it's not even like we can just break up and be done with it. My entire existence feels heavy, And I don't know, I just feel like everything is going wrong right now. I have talked to my parents about this, but they don't really know what to do either. They only advised me to do whatever I felt was right, and they would be supportive of it, and I guess that's kind of helpful knowing that they will be on my side no matter what, but I can't help feeling like everything is falling apart. And the fact that it's been less than even a month since our wedding is what makes everything so much harder to deal with. I know it's really easy for people to just tell me that this is a huge red flag and I should leave my husband, get divorced, and be done with it, but in reality it's not that easy, and I'm not even talking about the legal process of divorce, I'm talking about the emotional and mental toll it takes. I don't know what I'm going to do. Full disclosure, I just have absolutely no idea, and I don't even know what to expect. Update 2. I returned from Miami a couple of days ago, and I don't know, things have not been great so far. The day that I came back, I returned to an empty home because Jacob was not here. I spent 3 weeks in Miami, and after 2.5 weeks, he stopped texting me. Even the last few messages that he sent me where he was still insisting that he did not have bad intentions and that I needed to reconsider whatever I was doing. When I came back home, I decided to finally respond to him, and I told him that I was back here. I didn't know what was going to happen. I just felt like I had to tell him because then at least something would happen. I couldn't stand the uncertainty of not knowing what the future holds, and I felt like I just had to talk to him. So the day that I told him that I was back here, he texted me back saying that he would come over the next day, and we could talk. I thought that it was a good sign and we would finally get somewhere, but when he came over the next day, we were still stuck talking about the same things. We were still fighting about who was overreacting and who was in the wrong. He continued to say that I shouldn't have reacted the way that I did in front of Angie and made such a big deal out of this because I should have just trusted him since he would never do anything to jeopardize our relationship. But the fact that I was against something as silly as Angie joining us for our honeymoon, which was nothing but a glorified vacation, made him feel like I was being a little too oversensitive and that I had no need to act so crazy about it. I thought that it was really unfair. I had already told him before how I felt about Angie joining us, but he had completely overlooked it. More than Angie being a part of our honeymoon, I had a problem with him going behind my back and lying to me. In fact, not only lied to me, but he also lied about me when he told Angie that it was my suggestion that she join us for our honeymoon. I would love for her to be happy, but not at the cost of my own happiness, and I don't think there's anything selfish or cruel about it like the way he was trying to portray it. If anything, he was the one being selfish because he couldn't be bothered to think about my feelings and only cared about being the good guy for his family, but not for me. It made me feel like he was telling me I was not worth it, and that was a really sucky feeling. On top of that, there was the fact that he was currently living in a hotel because he said that he hadn't even left after he found out that I had taken off without him. He told me that after I stopped responding to his messages, he had half a mind to go ahead and file for a divorce because he thought I was taking things too far. I thought this attitude was uncalled for because he was the one who screwed up. We argued a lot into some things up. There was absolutely no improvement in our situation. He keeps saying that I don't have a sibling, which is why I don't understand why this is so important to him, and alright, maybe that's true. I'll never personally understand what it is like to have a sibling and care for them so much. But you know what? There were several people in the comments of this post who did have siblings, and they told me that this was taking things too far. So yeah, maybe he is the one who is wrong, and he's just trying to gaslight me into believing that I'm the one who is overreacting. Whatever the case, I'm not falling for any of it. I have made up my mind that if he doesn't apologize to me soon, then I might just have to talk to my lawyer and prepare for a divorce. If he does apologize, that's a different story. I've been thinking about marriage counseling, but that's only if he approaches me within the next few days and tells me that he is sorry about everything. Right now, it seems really unlikely just by the way he and Nora are the only people who think what he did was completely fine, and I am the one who is taking it too hard for no reason. But Angie, the person who they are fighting so hard for, is actually on my side on this. She has reached out to me several times to let me know that she has been trying to explain this to both Nora and Jacob and tell them that what they did was backhanded and it was just not cool. But they're not even willing to listen to her, which just goes to show that it's more important for them to be right even more than doing the right thing. I totally don't even know what to think anymore because this situation is just ridiculous. I thought that I had married a sensible and amazing man, but right now, I don't feel that this is the same person that I had married. I have a lot of conflicting feelings, and talking about it here helps me make sense of it even if it's just a little. I just don't want anything apart from a resolution to this. It's getting really tiring now, and I can't continue to deal with this drama all the time. Update 3. Hi folks, so this update is long overdue now. I haven't posted anything here for the past couple of months because I've been going through a terrible divorce. I did decide to give a chance and suggested marriage counseling a couple of days after my last update here. He had expressed that he wanted to work on our marriage, and he didn't want to give up yet. Jacob said that he wasn't ready to let go of me and wanted to work on our issues. So after a lot of deliberation, he and I decided to give marriage counseling a try, but it didn't help. We would be doing perfectly fine during the sessions in the presence of our therapist, but as soon as we were out, it would be back to fighting, and it would feel like we were just wasting time. During therapy sessions, we still didn't give up though. We attended the sessions for almost a month until we finally called it quits because it just didn't make sense to keep attending the sessions and work everything out there but continue to keep fighting in real life. He wasn't ready to accept that he was being a little too family-oriented for his own good and was forgetting that I was his family also, and I wasn't okay with living a life like that where I would always come second. So both of us agreed that it would be for the best if we just separated. It sounds easy, but it was an incredibly difficult decision to make, and both of us were shattered that this was not going to work out. We filed for divorce mutually, and right now we are in the settlement phase. At this point, I don't even care what I get out of the divorce. I just want this to be over so I can move on with my life and pretend that this never happened. I have been looking into individual therapy for myself because it's really crazy what I'm dealing with here, and I really think I could do with help to process everything that's going on. My parents and my friends have been incredibly supportive, and I'm really grateful for it because they're the only people who are actually making it easier for me. I know lots of people are gossiping about me and how my marriage fell apart within less than a year, but I honestly don't even care. What matters is the people who I care about on my side and think that I did the right thing. As long as I have that, I'm not too worried about what happens in the future. I'm just going to work and focus on myself now. Sure, it's going to be a painful couple of months emotionally, but people have gone through worse and survived, and I'm hopeful for the future. Thank you so much for all the love and support that you guys have shown me. It means a lot to me. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Parents and golden child sister dumped me on my 15th birthday for a vacation. So I invited all their work friends to a fake party and spilled the truth. 3 days ago, I celebrated my 15th birthday, but things didn't exactly go according to plan. On the morning of my birthday, my parents came up to me very happily and told me that to surprise me on my birthday, they had arranged for a family trip to the Poconos. I was super excited. Being the less important younger sibling, I don't usually get surprises like this, and I was really happy. However, a couple of hours later, after I was done packing and went down with my bags to leave with my family, I saw that my parents were already out, and it was just my older sister, Alex, 17F, who was waiting for me downstairs. She is the golden child, the one who can always get our parents to do exactly what she wants, and this time it was no different. She seemed very happy, so I instantly knew there was something wrong. When I asked her what was going on, she told me that there was no need for me to pack my bags and I could go up and unpack. At first, I thought that the trip had been canceled altogether, but then she told me that there would be no family vacation for me and handed me a piece of paper with a list of chores written on it. I was very confused, and then she told me that my parents and she had decided that even though they had surprised me with the vacation in the morning, they had a discussion about this, and Alex thinks that because we have our finals coming up in a couple of weeks, it would be much better for me to stay at home and try to study. But she gets to go because she's already done with everything. In the meantime, if I started getting bored without my family while they were away in the Poconos, I could start working on these tasks that needed to be done around the house. Then she laughed and said that instead of looking upset, I should really be thanking her because she had bought me some time to study and prepare for my final, rather than waste my time frolicking outside with my family. I was so hurt that I couldn't even bring myself to say anything except ask where our parents were, and she told me that she was the one who had already sent them off to the airport and stayed back so she could deliver this to me in person because it was her birthday gift to me. She said that my parents wanted to know they were not giving me false hopes, but Alex had brought up my finals, which were going to be held in a couple of weeks just after they had surprised us both with the news of the trip, and so they couldn't ignore it, and they thought that this was for the best. They had apparently let Alex tell me about this because they couldn't bring themselves to break my heart, and I knew for a fact that Alex loved and relished the opportunity to humiliate me like that. So I resisted the urge to start crying in front of her and went back upstairs with my bags. I waited until I heard the front door shut, and then I finally broke down and cried for an entire hour. Alex has always hated me, and I have known that, and I've also always known that my parents will just do whatever she says without thinking much because to them, her word is the Holy Grail. But I couldn't even imagine that they would do something so cruel and humiliating to me on my birthday of all days. Alex and I have had our fair share of fights before, and my parents have always taken her side, but this was unimaginable. On the morning of my birthday, after my parents had told me about the surprise trip, I even texted my friends and told them that I wouldn't be able to hang out with them in the evening as I had planned on doing, and even they had been pretty surprised that my parents had arranged something like this for me. I guess some things are genuinely too good to be true, but I was still pissed after I stopped crying, and the more I thought about my situation, the worse I felt. So I decided to do something that I knew would piss my parents and Alex off greatly to get back at them. Since I was home by myself, I decided to go into my dad's office and make a bunch of phone calls from my phone to all the important contacts that I found on my dad's MacBook. I invited them to a party in the evening that I had arranged for my parents' anniversary, and I wanted to surprise them. I know it was a bit of a last-minute invitation, but I told everyone that I would be really grateful if they were able to show up, and since I'm just a kid, most of his business associates agreed to attend this party that I was throwing. I did the same for my mother as well. Neither of them had password-protected devices, and it made the stupid decision of leaving it all at home, so it was a piece of cake for me. Then I decided to text Alex's boyfriend on Instagram and told him the same thing and invited him in the evening. I also invited my own friends and had them help me set up the house to make it look like a party. And finally, around 7 o'clock in the evening, the guests that I had invited finally started showing up, but they were really shocked to see that my parents were nowhere to be found. I kept telling them that it was a surprise for the evening, so they would be able to find out what was going on in due course. Then once all the guests had arrived and I had taken a groupie with all of them, I decided to put my plan into action and told them exactly where my parents were. I told them all about the way that I had been treated and how my parents always seemed to think that whatever Alex said was what should be followed, and I was basically Cinderella, but I had never spoken up about any of this until today. Then I explained to them what exactly had happened on the day of my birthday and how my parents just abandoned me and didn't even bother to explain things to me in person. All because Alex thought it was the right thing to do. I see that a lot of people were extremely shocked since my parents put up a really good act in front of other people of being nice and decent people, but I can tell you for a fact that good people don't do stuff like this to their own kids. Anyway, once I was done telling them all about what happened, I told them that this was exactly why I had thrown this party, so I could expose my parents and my sister, and if I hadn't screwed things up for the three of them badly enough, I also decided to show them all the list of chores that Alex had left to me. I could see that her boyfriend, who was standing in a corner of the room because he did not have any idea that Alex had this cruel and inhuman streak in her as well. Everyone was quiet after I spoke up and shared what had happened with me, and eventually I think people realized that there was no point in staying any longer, so some of them left without a word and some of them bothered to come up to me and console me and then left. The only thing I felt bad about was that I had wasted their time, but I wouldn't worry too much about it because all of them had left. I decided to send the group photo that I had clicked with everybody who had attended the party and sent it to my parents and my sister with a caption that said, "Had some guests over for my birthday party today. I think we are going to finally get started on the list that Alex left me." It was the perfect plan, and after I sent that message and they responded within seconds telling me to fix whatever I had done right now and they were coming back home on the next flight, I blocked all of them and went to my best friend Fiona's house with my bags because I knew that that was not my home anymore. Fiona and her parents are really sweet people who always used to tell me that their doors would always be open for me, and I only decided to take them up on their offer now and move in with them. I don't know how long they're going to be able to support me, but for now this is all that I have, and I am very grateful to them for opening up their home to me so graciously. Anyway, on the day of my birthday, I didn't hear anything from them, but the next day they came to see me at Fiona's house. I guess nobody was surprised that I had chosen to stay with Fiona because they knew that she and I had been the best of friends since we were really little, and when they came by, her parents refused to let them in and said that they had no business trying to talk to me when I had made it very clear that I was not interested in speaking to them about anything. But my parents started threatening to take legal steps against Fiona's parents, and I got kind of scared, so I told them to let them in and I would be ready to talk to them. They were furious with me and said that no matter what they had done, I still had no right to involve their business associates in this because now the entire reputation was in ruins and none of their coworkers and associates were willing to even speak to them. Some of them had even blocked my mom and dad, and they were blaming me for all of this, which I think is fair because I did orchestrate this entire thing. But I also told them that if they had just shown me a bit of kindness and not utterly humiliated me by pulling that stunt on my birthday, I wouldn't have done any of this. I ended up shouting at them for always treating me badly in comparison to Alex and said that she, along with my parents, had ruined my life and I was never going to forgive them for that. Things got really heated, and all of us were yelling at each other so much that Fiona's parents had to intervene and Fiona had to take me out of the room to calm me down. When I had finally calmed down, her parents came to me and said that my parents had left and they were going to make sure that they never got to speak to me until I was ready to come face to face with them. Then they suggested that I should really consider legal recourse, like emancipation from my parents, because it had become increasingly obvious that they couldn't care about me any less and it was time that I cut them out of my life for good. So after discussing this with Fiona's parents, I decided to speak to a lawyer, and we are now considering emancipation. I'm still very confused about it because this is a huge decision to make and I don't want to regret anything in the future, but honestly, at the rate that things are going, I don't think that I will because yesterday my parents got in touch with me again against my will. So last evening, I received an email and I knew from the address that it was from my parents. So I tried really hard not to open it, but curiosity got the better of me and I ended up reading it. They had essentially started off by telling me that the reason they had even surprised me with that trip was because one of my father's clients had opened up a new spa and resort in the Poconos, and this was a perk for my dad and the family. He just decided to utilize this opportunity around the same time as my birthday, but when Alex brought up my finals, since they didn't want my grades to slip later on only because I had taken a vacation with them just a couple of weeks to go for my exam, and they couldn't believe that I had misconstrued as something ugly and tried to get revenge on them for it. It just made them feel like they had not raised me right. Alex herself was upset, and she only wanted to be a good, concerned big sister to me, so there was no need for me to overreact the way that I had. It was all a bunch of baloney, and I was really annoyed, so I almost stopped reading the email halfway through, but then the next half was all about how upset they were that I had involved other people in our family drama and aired our dirty linen in public because this was something that they had never wanted or even expected to happen. They said that regardless of how many fights we had had, I had never come up to them and told them directly exactly what issues I was having with my parents, so they were never able to work on it. They claimed that if I had just spoken to them once and discussed my feelings with them, then they might have been able to make things right with me, but instead, I had taken such a drastic step. They said that the list of chores that Alex had left with me was a tad bit too much, but even then I should have called them up later on and confronted them about it, and they would have come back immediately if they knew that I was feeling left out and neglected. However, the way that I had chosen to deal with the situation was really unexpected, and they felt bad about everything because apparently they genuinely didn't want to hurt me and this was just an unfortunate misunderstanding blown out of proportion. They want me to talk to them and sort things out, but I don't know what I want to do right now. I'm having very mixed feelings about this, so please help me. Aita for throwing a party and exposing my parents amongst all their coworkers and business associates after they left me out while they went on vacation. Update 1. Okay, so most of you think that what I did was completely fine and they deserved it, and that is nothing that I have to apologize for, so I have decided that I'm not going to apologize. I blocked the email address that they sent that email to me from so they wouldn't be able to contact me another time. I know that they can just make another one and keep trying to text me, but I'll just keep blocking them, and I have made up my mind now. Whatever they try to say to me, I'm just not going to respond to it or even try to read it. It's just not worth it. All it's going to do is mess me up in the head even more. And as for emancipation, I have decided that I'm going through with it. It's a huge deal, and I know that I'm still too young, but Fiona and her parents have reassured me that no matter what happens, they are going to be by my side and I have nothing to worry about. They have told me that they can even legally adopt me if that's going to make me feel less nervous, and I actually think that it might, but I haven't thought about that yet. Right now, we are only focusing on the emancipation and we have spoken to a lawyer and the paperwork is being processed at the moment. I truly don't know how my parents are going to react to it because when they sent me that email, I could tell that they were not happy about the fact that I'm choosing to live with Fiona and her parents as of now, which doesn't even make sense to me because from the way that I have been treated my entire life, it has become very obvious to me that they really don't want me that much. At least they don't want me in their home as much as they want Alex around them. That's very obvious to me, and yet they are still trying to reach out to me, and that was just very confusing for me. I have a feeling that they only wanted to get me back because they wanted to fix their reputation and their image, nothing else. I'm just very confused at the moment. Right now, all I can do is wait for them to receive the paperwork and see how they react to it. It's been a couple of days since my post, and they have not tried to reach out to me again after that email, so I don't know what they are feeling at the moment. I know that things cannot be good for them either because there were a bunch of people at the party that I had invited, and I have been hearing from people that Alex and her boyfriend broke up, but nobody knows the reason except for me, of course. Update 2. Hi guys, so a couple of days back my parents finally were served with the paperwork for my legal emancipation, and they were not happy about it, which was quite surprising for me. They called up Fiona's parents, and there was a huge fight since apparently they believed that Fiona and her parents had put me up to this and were controlling me. They did not think that I was doing this on my own will, which didn't make sense to me because do they realize how badly they have treated me in the past? Of course I was doing this of my own free will. Nobody even had to force me to think twice. I had sort of started anticipating this kind of reaction out of them after I had posted my last update, since a lot of you had told me that they were doing exactly what I thought they were doing. They only wanted me back so that they could show everyone that we were a happy family, and whatever I had said at the party, it was just me being bratty. But I did not go back to them, and that's what really pissed them off. The fact that I am finally standing up to them, they cannot take that well. Too bad, because it's happening. They can call Fiona's parents all the names that they want, but it's not going to change the fact that they deserve this. They do not deserve to be my parents, and now I'm finally going to be free from them. I couldn't overhear much, but Fiona told me that apparently my parents had called her parents every name in the book that they could think of and had said that they were going to fight them and take this to court if it was necessary because they had no right to put me up to all of this nonsense and that they were going to tolerate it. They were pretty pissed off and had even threatened to hurt them, which I thought was crazy because I hope they realize it's not legal and it's just going to make them come off worse. The way they had spoken to Fiona's parents about me, it just kind of reiterated what I already believed about them. They did not want me back because they thought of me as a daughter whom they loved, but more because they wanted to fix their image in front of other people. Fiona's parents wanted to ruin their reputation by acting like the saviors for me and trying to show the world that I had been mistreated in my own home, which is why I had come to them, but they were not going to allow it to happen. Apparently, they had been yelling on the phone about how I had been an entitled spoiled brat, and the fact that Fiona and her parents were supporting it only meant that they were not the ones who fit to be parents. I'm pretty sure if they actually loved me like a daughter, they would have been more concerned about my well-being and would have tried to talk to me rather than yell at Fiona's parents and imply that they were trying to ruin my parents' reputation. Why would they even want to do that? Fiona's parents have not known my parents for long. They have only known each other through the two of us, so there is no reason for them to be competing against them. It's not like there is any competition anyway, since Fiona's parents are a lot more successful in life and are also much kinder and compassionate, but my parents are so concerned about the so-called image that they think that Fiona's parents are just like them and are incapable of thinking about me and are just trying to pull them down. I so desperately want to tell my parents that they are not pretending to be my saviors by trying to help me out here, but they actually are my saviors because it is them that I needed saving from, and if they had just understood that in the first place, they would have been sorry for everything that they had done instead of trying to stir up even more drama. But Fiona and her parents have given me strict instructions not to reach out to them, no matter how tempted I feel, because it's just not worth it. And I know that they got the phone call from my parents a couple of days ago, and after fighting with them on the phone call and giving me only the details that they thought were necessary for me to know, they told me that they had recorded the phone call and my parents were really stupid because they could use as evidence for why I deserve to be emancipated from them. They also told me that they wanted me to think about whether I wanted them to legally adopt me or not, and I ended up saying yes since I really like them, and I also know that this is going to piss my parents off even more, but that's not really a reason. It's mostly because I genuinely feel like they are extremely kind-hearted and lovely human beings, and having Fiona as my sister is going to be a bonus. So I'm all in. They have told me that they are going to speak to the lawyer once more to start the paperwork for that as well, since it might also help with my emancipation case, knowing that I have better people to rely on and live with. Honestly, this just keeps getting better and I couldn't have been more grateful to them. Update 3. Hi. Something terrible happened today. Long story short, Alex beat the crap out of me after school today. My last class, English, was being held in the east wing of the school, and when I was out of class she had a bunch of her friends literally cornered me. I am unfortunately always the last person to leave class because I'm very slow at packing my things, and by the time I exited the classroom, most people had already left. When I saw Alex and her friends standing outside, I felt a bit intimidated, but I didn't let it show because that would only make them win anyway. When I started to leave the classroom, they got all up in my face and said that I was not allowed to leave. Then they made everyone else who was loitering in the class get out and told me that they had some scores to settle with me. I tried to square up to them and keep a level head so that the fear wouldn't show on my face, but they didn't seem to care. Alex grabbed my arm and walked with me outside while I yelled at her to let me go. But everyone else was loud as well and nobody could hear me. Then they took me to the janitor's closet and locked the inside after shoving me in forcefully. I kept banging on the door, but they were standing outside, and I think even if people heard me, they wouldn't dare to do anything because Alex and her friends are in the senior-most classes and have a nasty rep. After putting me in there for almost 5 minutes, Alex allowed me to come out, and by then pretty much everyone in that wing of the school had cleared out and it was just me against them. That's when the first slap landed on my face and she started screaming at me. She called me selfish, said that I was ungrateful to our parents, and then came the real reason why she was so pissed. She started accusing me of being the reason her boyfriend had broken up with her. Then she slammed my head against the concrete, and that's when I started feeling really dizzy. So she took advantage of that and just kept pounding me with her fists, and her friends just watched and laughed. It was extremely painful and I tried to defend myself, but Alex was several inches taller than me and much heavier, so there was not much that I could do. At one point, I literally just started cowering against the wall and she still continued to beat me. Once she felt satisfied, she kicked me one last time and then she and her friends left while I cried against the wall. About 15 minutes later, Fiona finally found me sitting on the floor and crying really badly. When I told her what had happened, she helped me get up, and instead of walking home together, we decided to take a cab back home because I was in no condition to walk. Once we got home, told her parents everything, and they looked pretty grim, so they contacted the school immediately and then the police. It has been only an hour since then and they have been talking on the phone ever since. So they are pretty busy, but Fiona is taking care of me since I'm pretty banged up. The bruises are just starting to show up and everything hurts, but I know that Alex will get her karma for this and she'll get it pretty soon. Update 4. Hi. So there are a lot of things that I want to talk about and I will just try to keep it short and sweet. Last week, Alex beat me up and thankfully the school stood up for me and shared the security footage from that wing of the building with the police, so it was pretty easy to charge her with a misdemeanor and she got community service to make up for it. But the best part is that she got suspended for the next 6 weeks as well, and that means that she won't be able to attend prom, something that she had been really looking forward to. She will not be able to sit for her finals with the rest of her class. She will have to be seated separately, and that means that she can't cheat her way out of it. I think it's well-deserved, and I felt quite vindicated when Fiona told me about all of this. Another great thing that happened was that after the whole debacle with Alex, my parents decided to give up my rights. That's right, they terminated their parental rights over me and the paperwork has been signed and everything. So I'm finally free and Fiona's parents are in the process of legally adopting me. So I couldn't be more grateful to them for that. My parents said that after everything that had happened, they don't want me in their family anymore, and I know that they are going to try and make it seem like I'm the one at fault, but I don't think anybody's going to buy that, so they can try their best. It doesn't matter to me anyway. To be honest, I am finally part of a happy family now, and I can vouch for the fact that my new sister and parents are going to be far better than the ones I originally had. I really can't believe that things are finally working out for me, and this is probably the happiest that I have felt in a really long time. So much so that I had actually forgotten about my finals coming up, but now Fiona and I are going to crack on and we are going to show everyone what I'm made of. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Caught my fiancée sexting her toxic ex and cancelled our wedding as revenge. I slept with the women she hated most and sent her the spicy photos. So this isn't going to be one of those stories where I need advice or anything because the entire thing has already come to a close, but I think there's certainly a lot that can be learned from the BS that I just had to experience. And since I learned a lot from stories that others have told here, I think that it's only right that I bring my own tale to the table. I'm certainly in the mood to make light of the situation because I got my get back and I got it good. I work at a certain large financial institution in the US and I'm not bragging, but I'm doing pretty great for myself with a lot of potential for growth, and all of this while I'm still just 32. During a conference I went to about 6 years back, I chatted with the woman who was sitting beside me and we got along so well. A few months after that, we started dating and we've been dating ever since. She just turned 30 a few days ago, but naturally with the way things ended up, there was no need to call her to send wishes or anything of the sort. It was exactly on her 29th birthday that I popped the question and she said yes right away. There's a bit of a smile on my face looking back at that because it was one of the happiest days of my life, and I'm sure of hers, but that's soured a lot now, aged like unrefrigerated milk. Either way, I asked her to marry me, she said yes, and we were engaged. Happy days, am I right? Now, I'm not certain if I'm the only one who has experienced this before, but when you deal with women who are too scared to talk about their sexual adventures with their friends, you as a partner might end up being the person they choose to start yapping to. I've had this happen in 2 separate relationships, of which this was one of them. I think most men don't want to continually hear stories of all the men that their girlfriend or fiancé or wife has slept with. It's the same way I don't attempt to indulge any woman with the people I've slept with. Anyway, it happened a few times before I finally told her that I really don't care to hear all her stories. But before that point, I had heard a lot about her most recent ex. I think it is fair to hear about exes in any new relationship, but I don't need the sexual details. The guy's name was Chris and they had a pretty toxic relationship, but he was so go in bed. Of course, we had slept together at this point and I had to wonder whether I was that go in bed too, maybe less OS for me. Supposedly, the bedroom situation was what kept her in such a toxic thing, which I'll admit was a red flag for me, but she was much younger and by extension naturally much stupider, so I let it slide. Anyway, that's necessary background to what I have to say next. I heard a lot about Chris in the early stages of the relationship, but after a point, nothing else. At that point, I assumed she had finally gotten over him, and that was good enough for me. I stopped hearing about him about 2 years in, even sparingly. So let's fast forward to the post-engagement stage. I and my fiancée Sandy, we already getting into the planning phase of things. We're both from relatively well-to-do homes. I personally wouldn't say my upbringing was wealthy or rich, but I've been told I'm out of touch before, and I accept my perspective might be a bit untrustworthy. Either way, both parents wanted something relatively big. I was fine with a friends and family type of situation, no uncles or aunts I hadn't seen since I was a toddler, but everyone including Sandy wanted it to be spectacular, so I gave up and let them have their way. Now here's where things get fun. Admittedly, this is where things went to hell for me back then, but as I said, I'm trying to be relatively lighthearted with the situation now. We were searching for a venue and everyone wanted something in some kind of scenic location like a private beach, a 10,000-year-old church, city hall, and on and on. Fortunately for me, I made it clear that I was fine just finding an event space in the city, but I was told I didn't have vision, so I told them they could do all the groundwork regarding the location. I wouldn't be stressing myself over something I wasn't that concerned over. So regarding a venue, Sandy told me that she was going to check out 3 of them with a friend, and I was totally fine with this. I mean, what was there to object to? She's been with a friend to try out caterers and to look at dresses, so big whoop. So the day goes by and she tells me that she checked out a few places with this friend and that a certain old church was tickling her fancy quite nicely. She said she was going to check it again in a few days with the same friend just to make sure she still felt the same way about it. And I told her that was fine because once again I didn't care about the venue and there was nothing that I could see to make any aspect of the situation seem off. Eventually, she went back to check the venue out with her friend again, and the consensus was that it be the place for her. So we put our name down and we'd have to pay a deposit within 30 days to book the day for ourselves. I eventually did, so the venue was set. Now everything went swimmingly for the next few weeks. Wedding preparations continued along just fine with additional things being settled, but for the most part we hadn't put down too much money. I am very fortunate to have had things happen the way they did, because one day when my wife went to sign for a delivery, she left her phone on the kitchen island, and who do I see a notification from Chris? "You there, babe?" I was very tempted to go through her messages, but she came back within seconds holding the package she had picked up. I had no confirmation that it was the same Chris, but if there was another Chris calling her babe, I think that somehow be worse in its own special way. It had to be her ex. Now I was able to keep my emotions in check because I know how guys can be. He could be an ex being pushy or trying his luck with pet names and sexual innuendo, and she might be completely unreceptive to it, but as long as she had no idea I knew, I could wait for an opportunity to read more. That opportunity came about 10 days later when her friend came to pick her up to go look at flower arrangements. She just happened to forget her phone, which was perfect for me. There was a chance of her coming back to get her phone, but I wasn't going to waste the chance. So I picked it up and went straight to her messaging app and looked for Chris. They had been talking, in fact they had been talking a lot. There was a lot of regular stuff there, some talk about the wedding. He mentioned the venue and how beautiful it was, saying, "We should go there again sometime outside of wedding duties." So he was the friend she went with. It only rushed back at that moment that she hadn't given me a name, and she usually did. She went with her ex of all people, the same Chris I hadn't heard of in ages, the same Chris who was so amazing in the bedroom that spurred me to keep reading up and up and up. Yeah, until I got to the juicy bits. There was a lot of sexting, a lot, and it was as explicit as you could imagine. Well, it remained in text form for the most part, but there were pictures exchanged. I had to go far up, but it was right around the time that they went to check out the old church the second time. Things were relatively sanitary from there down, besides pet names being thrown around. I couldn't tell if they had slept together, but she clearly didn't regret what they had done at that point because they were still talking actively. She was keeping the idiot on speed dial. That's when I heard the door unlock. Now at that moment, I considered putting her phone down. I really strongly considered acting like I wasn't doing anything, but you know what? I said to hell with that. I let her walk in on me holding her phone. As soon as we locked eyes, I saw her eyes widen, and she nearly sprinted towards me, trying to force a lighthearted, "What are you doing?" When she got by my side, she saw Chris's chat open on her phone, and I just looked up at her from where I was sitting. She struggled to find words to say. I could see her lips trying to move. "You went through my phone? Really? Are you serious?" Yes, she tried to make me the villain. I was so pissed off by the response, but all I did was laugh. I actually think it might have seemed like I was crazy because she took a step back. "I actually had no idea. I genuinely had no idea," I said to her. "Your lover sent a message when you went to sign for the package the other day. I saw the notification, and that's what spurred me to check your phone. I definitely had reason to do this, so don't even try and flip things on me, because if things had gone your way, I still would have been stupidly ignorant and you would have continued to cheat on me with Chris." She started to mumble and tell me how it wasn't what it looked like. "I know you guys slept together." I was bluffing hard, but I just had a gut feeling. She denied it right away, but I stood my ground and told her to stop lying. She denied it again, and I placed her phone on the table and pushed it towards her. "I can't marry a liar." That's when she erupted into tears, wailing and telling me that it was just once. I laughed again. "Just once? Yet you sexted with him, you guys are still in contact." "It was a mistake, baby. I made a mistake." She kept trying to touch me, but I kept swatting her away. That line was incredibly funny to me because it was only a mistake because I caught her. She would have kept going along with me and her ex on the side. She would have gotten married to me and probably kept sleeping with him. Like the length things could have gotten to had I not caught this was actually quite distressing to think that I had no idea and I had trusted her entirely before. I just happened to see that message on her phone. It's riling me up right now thinking of it. I stood up and I went to the bedroom and grabbed her suitcase from out of the closet. She followed me, and once she saw me throwing her belongings into it, she started to wail again, which was really starting to piss me off. She kept begging me through tears, but I was really not in the mood for any of this. To imagine I was planning a wedding with her was crazy. "Give me the ring back." If you see the look on her face at that point, it was like she had seen a ghost. I think despite everything, it was at that point she actually realized how deeply she had messed up. She realized the actual consequences of her actions. My hand was outstretched in front of her for like 2 minutes before she finally took the ring off and placed it in my hand. She didn't even fight it, and that made me glad since I was starting to run out of patience at that point. After roughly shoving some of her stuff into the suitcase, I passed it to her and told her to get out of the house, which she did silently. That night I locked the door, turned off all the lights, and I got drunk. The next morning I woke up to several missed calls. There were some from her parents, and even some from my parents. Obviously she had to have told them that I said the wedding was off, but I wondered if she had told them why. Almost definitely not, I thought at the time. Honestly, I wasn't in the mood to talk to anyone because there was nothing they do beyond either sympathizing with me or telling me that Sandy and I could work past things. I didn't want to have to put up with either of those. At a few points during the day people came knocking on my door, but I was silent all through. When they eventually left, it wasn't until the next day that I created a group chat and added both sets of parents, Sandy and her siblings. I wrote a very long message detailing absolutely everything that happened in as much detail as I cared to include at the moment. I didn't care that her parents were there or that mine were there. If they were going to have any input on the state of the soon-to-be-cancelled wedding, they'd need to know exactly where I was coming from. So yeah, I told them absolutely everything. It was tiring recapping the whole saga, but I did. The group chat was silent for a full hour after that, even though I could see that several of them had read the messages, including my ex-fiancé. The first indication I had gotten that someone had actually comprehended the entire thing was when my dad called me. I remember exactly what he said. "Son, I'm sorry, you made the right choice. It'll hurt, but it was the right choice." That stuck with me because a weaker man might have gone back to his vomit when the pain got too strong, but I never even considered it. Every time I remember that line. Throughout the day I got messages and calls, some of which I replied to, some of which I ignored. It was clear though that everyone had gotten the news and there was no point talking to me about it because my mind was set. That right there was pretty much the last time our wedding plans were so actively spoken about, at least to my knowledge. Her parents never tried to plead with me because I assumed they had the sense to know their daughter had messed up immensely. But the thing is that wasn't enough for me, it really wasn't. I really had to make Sandy hurt the same way I did because calling off an engagement isn't real pain for her if it was merely the consequences of her actions. The first thing I wanted to do was get at Chris, but I really couldn't figure out how. I had no real dirt on him, though I did hope that Sandy would want nothing to do with him, seeing as he was the root of all the embarrassment and pain she had gone through. After all, her immediate family all knew she was an unfaithful hoe, and that was satisfying. It probably would have helped if I had come to ask for help here on how I could get back at Chris, but honestly my mind wasn't in the right place at the time. I hope you can understand that. So I let him go despite not wanting to. However, the real person I needed to get back at was Sandy, and I had a plan. Here's the thing, we weren't together anymore. Anyone I chose to sleep with at this point was entirely fair game, even if it were her sister. No, I wasn't planning to sleep with her sister. I'm just making a point. The thing was I wanted to make sure it hurt her a lot, so I had two options. Sleep with the people she loves the most or sleep with the people she hates the most. Considering how our relationship had gone down the toilet, all her best friends would have been aware and it'd be difficult terrain for me to navigate. However, the people she hates would be a different kind of evil. I mean, if you're reading this, think about it. How would you feel if your partner slept with the annoying guy at the office who you absolutely hate? It'd make you hate him even more, but it would also hurt a lot because you're sharing your partner with the last person on earth that you would have chosen. That was my reasoning. So I had to go through my head to figure out a few female coworkers that my wife had complained about a lot. Top of the list was a Sophia who she hated because she thinks she's all that, which was probably girl speak for feeling threatened by her. That might have meant she was a hottie, and I was excited to find out. There was a college classmate called Melissa. They used to be friends, but then Melissa slept with one of my ex-fiancé's exes, and they had a huge falling out and S's hated her ever since. Finally, I could recall a Japanese girl called Toki, and Sandy explicitly said, "I hate her because she tries to act all dainty and cute and the men drool over her like fools." My list had a few other names, but let me jump ahead and tell you that I either couldn't do enough digging to find them online or I failed to seal the deal. Anyway, Sophia wasn't hard to find. They work at the same place, so Lincoln helped me out immensely in that regard. From there, I was able to find her Instagram account and I messaged her from there. I use IG a lot and I'm not trying to be conceited, but it's a pretty attractive page to those who like slightly lavish lifestyles. I had a lot of cool outfits, my Audi showed up a few times, and a few vacations I had been on also made features. When I followed Sophia, you followed right back within minutes and I sent her a message. I played my usual slick talk and I could clearly tell she was into me. This went on for a day more before I asked her if she'd like to go on a date and she said yes. I made it very clear that Data takes several photos of her and with her, and I made sure she looked amazing in each one. That date had a happy ending if I say so myself. The next one was Melissa. Now at this point I realized that I was doing a lot in the name of revenge. But I was committed. Melissa lived two states over, but I still sent her a message on IG anyway. The problem was, and I didn't bargain for this, she recognized me. My wife and her had not kept in touch, but I guess Melissa made it a habit to keep occasional tabs on her life out of hate or something, and I certainly showed up on my wife's social media. I was found out, so I went for an honest route. I let Melissa know I had split with Sandy, and she said, "Good, I hated her." The next message, "Oh, I'm sorry, I know you must still love her." I told Melissa that no, I did not still love her, and I was looking exactly for someone who I could share my hate with. She started a voice call with me immediately after that message. I did find it odd, and we got to talking about my ex-fiancé. At a point I just blurted out, "I want to get back at her." And Melissa, apparently a chronic homewrecker, said, "You could sleep with me." At this point I could see why Sandy hated her back then. But this just worked in my favor. See, setting things up was incredibly easy. I flew over on a weekend. Melissa and I went bowling and sightseeing in her city again with lots of photographic evidence for my devious purposes, and then we went to her house and had some fun. She even let me take some very suggestive photos of her. Apparently the hate between the two of them was a lot deeper than I envisioned. Finally, it was time for Toki. I was lucky with this one because I found her on Tinder. I had no idea what she looked like, but the name Toy was certainly not common for the area I lived in. I matched with her right away and I sent her a message. She was pretty slow with her replies, and when I proposed a date she said she wouldn't be available for the week. It took a while for me to seal the deal, especially because when I eventually went on a date with her, it took 3 dates to get anything to happen. I got my photos, though, of course, all taken with her fully aware. It took exactly 6 weeks for me to finalize all of this, and I won't lie, I really wondered whether I was a psychopath to go through all that trouble to get back at someone. But I knew I'd finally feel a lot better at the end of it, so I brushed those feelings aside. I texted Sandy out of the blue one day, and it took her ages to reply, but she eventually did. We got through some very awkward pleasantries, but I told her I wanted to meet up with her, though I didn't tell her what for, and I'm certain that got her hopes up. She told me she could be ready in 15 minutes, but I insisted that we meet in 3 hours because I really wanted to drive her crazy with the suspense. No, we were not getting back together, but I bet that's what she thought. Finally, the time came and I met her at a park. She was there before I got there, which was unsurprising since I had been as sluggish as possible while preparing. She stood to hug me and I accepted it. It was easier to get her hopes up if I wasn't too cold. We went through a bunch of dry pleasantries before I took out my phone and sent her a bunch of media. I told her to take a look. Her straight face melted into a frown as she opened the photos I had sent to her. The first face she saw was Sophia, and she said, "Why are you showing me this?" But before I could answer, she scrolled to the next picture, which had me and Sophia in it. Then she kept scrolling past the Sophia pictures to the toy ones. She was a lot of fun to be around. I made sure to say that extremely casually. I saw tears welling up in Sai's eyes as she kept looking. Then she saw Melissa. First a video of me and Melissa bowling, and then the more explicit one. She literally watched that video loop 3 times before I said, "None of these women were as bad as you made them seem. In fact, they were all a lot better than you, especially where it mattered most." She flipped out. She stood up and started howling Explo lives at me. She kept pointing her finger at me aggressively, and I wondered if she was going to feel the whim to hit me at any point, but she just kept screaming and shouting about how I was a scumbag and how I was a piece of crap and on and on. Honestly, I kind of zoned out because I was raving in the way she was shaking with rage. At a point she said, "You made it seem like you're a saint, but you're worse than me." I stopped her there. I wasn't the one who reconnected with my ex, slept with him, kept having charged conversations with him, and did that all while I was engaged. I am not engaged now, and that's because of everything you did. So if you're mad, you can only be mad at yourself. I said all of that calmly, and I stood up. Really, you can only be mad at yourself, Sandy. This was simply what you deserve. She started to cry again, and this time she looked truly broken. But that was it for me. Seeing that look was like closure. I truly felt satisfied that I had done what I needed to do. Since then, I haven't heard from her even when she turned 30, but to be honest, I prefer things that way. I don't know if this is practical advice for anyone, but don't think that any woman is beyond cheating, because that's what I thought about my ex-fiancé, and I was proven so wrong. If you can sign a prenup, please do, because I was lucky to get out of my situation before marriage. All I can really say as a parting note is that you should always stay vigilant. If you need to check her phone, do it, especially if you have reasonable suspicion. It's not worth it living with someone who is giving you trust issues. I managed to get out of my situation, and for the sake of all you younger and even older men out there, I hope you do too. Now on to the next story. Story 5. A narcissistic MIL canceled my baby shower last minute and showed up uninvited to the one my mom jumbled to throw instead, and now is crying on social media for me being a selfish daughter-in-law. I, 31F, am furious right now. A few weeks ago, my MIL, let's call her Judy, promised to host a baby shower for her family and friends. This was after my mom's invite to the baby shower my mom was planning for me went out, so she had received the invite from her, obviously. I reminded her that my mom wanted to plan one, and I agreed, thinking it would be cool to have two and just easier because my husband and I both have huge families, and there's no way both families would be able to be in one place at the same time without renting out a hall or something, which we don't have the money for. She said that was fine and agreed with me, and said she'd be willing to host one at her place so that my mom could host one at her place. Cool, whatever. But a few months ago, my MIL and Phil bought this place that literally hadn't been updated since the 70s. I'm talking brown shag carpet, shell sinks, and green tubs, you name it. It needed a lot of work. They would occasionally ask my husband, 31M, I'll call him Mike, to help them work on the place, but this was while we were also trying to get our own house ready for this baby. It was a real pain in the ass because we had even told them that we'd be limited in how much help we can give them because of trying to prep for baby and all this. My husband is a woodworker and is building the crib and changing table himself. Both his MIL and Phil said that they were okay and didn't need the help, and that they'd get contractors. Well, 2 weeks in, and they had already called him to help scrape the popcorn ceilings off. I doubt you've ever done that, but it's a real pain in the ass. Anyways, the date of the baby shower is approaching and the house is nowhere near done. We keep asking if we should let people know that her shower is canceled or if we should change the location or change the date. She said it's okay, it'll be done, and promised us. Well, literally the week of the shower, they're over for dinner and she drops the bomb and tells us that she thinks she bit off more than she could chew and asked if we'd be okay hosting the shower here. I look at my husband and he almost spits his food out. I'm waiting for him to say something. My MIL starts half-ass apologizing and said she'd bring over everything, the food, extra tables, she just needs the space. Well, we live in an 1,100 square foot condo and she wants about 30 people here. She must have seen the look on my face and goes, if we would have had the help, it might have been done for the shower. She accused me of not being excited about the house or appreciating it when she mentioned it at dinner before. She never showed any signs of underappreciation. She always told me to rest and that she didn't need my help because of my condition. And then I said that Mike has been busy here trying to get our own house ready for the baby. There was a lot around here that needed to get done that we've been putting off, and we don't want to have to be doing things while the baby is here. Well, they go home that night and my husband receives a text that says they are too burnt out from Reno to be hosting a baby shower and that they're going to be reaching out to people to tell them that it's canceled. She even said that I wasn't being grateful and didn't seem excited that she was doing all of this for me, and felt a little bit used. Used? She's the one that wanted to do a baby shower for me even though my mom had already invited her to hers. Why is she doing this? I am beyond pissed off with her. And on top of everything else, I am about to give birth to her first and only grandchild in less than 2 months. This isn't the first time she's been like this with me. She never really liked me dating Mike. In the past, we've been together for 15 years. We started dating in senior year. She would literally ignore me when I would come over to their place after school. She'd tell Mike to date other people right in front of me. She'd even go so far as getting numbers from other girls or bringing girls to hockey games that Mike used to play. So after a hockey game, these girls she'd bring would be thinking that Mike was interested, and then I'd be standing there waiting for him to get out of the dressing room. Mike used to be in a junior team that would go away and live with a billet family for the winter seasons, and then he'd come back in the summer. He wouldn't be paid for this, but it was sort of like playing hockey to either get a scholarship or drafted to a farm team or the NHL. It was basically an unpaid career. Anyways, since then, I've distanced myself from her and my Phil, not that he really did anything wrong, but I feel like maybe by allowing her to do that, it sort of was kind of doing something wrong. I don't want to go over to their house anymore. I don't care that there's no baby shower for her. But I am sort of sad that Mike's aunts and sisters and a few family friends on his side think that it's canceled and are bummed about it. I want to invite them to my mom's. I've already talked to my mom about it and she's cool with that, but like, should I invite them and then not invite my MIL? Would that look bad? What do I do? Update 1. I couldn't help but stew in my anger and frustration, even though I really tried to get over it. The audacity of my MIL's behavior was astonishing. She had a knack for making everything about herself. And yeah, maybe I was still feeling petty about things that had happened in the past, but like, for real, after going over it with Mike and my mom, we decided that it would be best to extend the invitation to some of Mike's relatives while excluding my MIL. It wasn't an act of revenge or malice. It was just a way for us to salvage the celebration that my MIL had single-handedly ruined because of her own pride. My mom sympathized with the situation, understanding that sometimes family dynamics can be challenging. I reached out to Mike's aunts and sisters individually, explaining the situation and extending an invitation to join us at my mom's baby shower in a few weeks' time. I tried to emphasize how much it would mean to have them there to celebrate this special moment in our lives. His aunts and sisters understood. They knew how Judy can be. Honestly, I don't even think they have that great of a relationship. His one aunt is constantly bitching to us about Judy and how much she uses her for rides around the city or babysitting their dog. I knew that they wouldn't want to miss out on something like this just because Judy can't get her together. As the days went on and the weekend came and went, we got heartfelt responses from Mike's aunts and sisters. They told us how disappointed they were in Judy and assured us that they would be more than happy to attend my mom's baby shower. They asked if we didn't want them to tell Judy, but we said it was to their own discretion. We honestly didn't care. It wasn't my party, it was my mom's, and my mom said if Judy thinks she's a hole for not inviting her MIL, then so be it. My mom gets it. Meanwhile, my MIL remained distant, and it was total radio silence. She avoided any direct confrontation with me or Mike. It was clear that she was not pleased with our decision to exclude her from the baby shower. However, I didn't let her manipulative tactics affect my happiness during this joyful time. This was supposed to be one of the best times in our lives. She wasn't going to bring this down. Throughout the day, I couldn't help but notice how supportive and genuinely happy everyone was for us. It honestly felt totally different to the energy that Judy was giving towards us. My mom had done an incredible job organizing the event, and it was a true celebration of love and anticipation for our growing family. There were games, laughter, and heartfelt conversations that made me feel so grateful to have these people in my life. But nothing could prepare me for what happened next. That literally walks in the front door with gifts in her hands and a big fake smile stretched across her face as if nothing had happened. I was right in the middle of opening gifts. I was on fire. The absolute audacity of this woman was beyond comprehension, and her blatant disregard for my feelings. Judy sauntered into the room like her effing didn't stink, and she was wearing this white dress. I was wearing a white dress. Well, I couldn't let you have all the fun now, could I? She said with this smug look, and I could have just screamed. Mike's aunts and sisters literally fell silent and looked shocked as hell. But nobody else knew that Judy wasn't going to be there on purpose. Nobody really asked about her at all, really. I gritted my teeth the whole time I was opening up the presents. My heart fell into my butt. I did feel bad, but like, how dare she show her face here after everything she'd done? My face was probably beet red with embarrassment and anger. I forced a smile and couldn't say anything. My mom came to greet her and said, "By all means, Judy, please make yourself at home," but it was more like a sarcastic tone. Judy's laughter grated on my nerves, and she went to grab a mimosa and settled into the seat beside me, urging me to open her gifts next. I wanted to honestly get up and cry and call Mike. I felt like I was 19 again, and Judy was trying to hurt me and pretend I didn't exist. This wasn't about me. She needed to make it all about her, and I knew that that's why she wanted to have a baby shower. The shower wouldn't be for me, it would be for her to show off the fact that she was going to be a grandma and that she was going to have a grandbaby. My mom knew that I was getting upset and suggested we get up and start a game. I ended up going to the bathroom and calling Mike and crying. Mike told me he was going to come and drag his mom out of there, but I told him that it was okay and just to leave it, we can deal with it later. I mean, we didn't invite her after all. This was my karma, I guess. And so I stood back up and wiped my face and went back and pretended I wasn't bothered. Bless my mom for taking care of all of this. She was an absolute champ at diverting and diffusing the situation. The day wore on and the festivities continued. I didn't want to be upset, but like also her, she was interacting with everyone as if all was good. And at one point my cousin said they didn't think she was coming and Judy straight up told her that I didn't want her there. My cousin laughed it off as if it was a joke. I felt so embarrassed. After the party, a few of my friends stayed behind and asked about why she had come so late, and I had to tell them that I didn't invite her. They all understood because they know all about her and how she's treated me. Update 2. The next day, Judy calls us and she tries to rip me and Mike a new one. He turns it back on her and is like, "How dare you?" and all this stuff. He's basically yelling at her and was telling her how she was wrong for crashing my mom's baby shower uninvited. He said she wasn't invited because of how she was treating them, Becca, me specifically, and making the shower all about her. He said that Becca, me, just wanted a day to celebrate her and the baby. Mike made it clear that her behavior was unacceptable and hurtful and that we wanted to break from her. He also apologized to her and said that we probably should have told her, but that she canceled it, and my mom thought it would be a nice gesture to still allow people to celebrate Becca and me. Judy tried to defend herself, claiming that she had a right to be there as the grandmother-to-be, but Mike wasn't having any of it. "You had your chance, Mom, but you chose to make this all about yourself. We asked you multiple times if we should reschedule or find some other way to have one. You disrespected us and our wishes. We're tired of your selfishness and manipulation. It's time for you to realize that your actions have consequences." I could hear Judy on the other end, and she was totally taken aback by Mike's stern tone. He was very much giving her what for. I've heard him talk to her like this before, but like also not to this extent. This was serious. She started crying, blah blah blah, crocodile tears, but for once he didn't back down or try to pacify her. He stood his ground, asserting himself and really refused to tolerate any more of her toxic shit. He told her we're not going to be talking to them for a while, and then his father got on the phone and I could hear him getting back at Mike for making his mother cry. Whatever, I'm so over it all. I really don't need this in my life. But like, are we wrong? Am I the a-hole here? Update 3. Well, get this. I told you that Judy called us this morning and we sort of laid into her. She put me on blast all over Facebook tonight and said that I didn't want her to be a part of the baby shower and that I forced her to cancel the shower that she had planned because her house wasn't good enough for my standards. And she's calling me a spoiled brat who doesn't know what it means to be family. She said that I called her a slew of names after the baby shower. She also blocked me on Facebook so I couldn't even see this. But Mike could. People in the comments were giving her pity and calling me a beach and a selfish cow and saying that she didn't raise Mike this way. She even said that I was going to keep her baby away from her. What? I honestly can't even believe this, and I can't even believe I'm typing this out right now. Mike called his dad and told him what happened, and his dad took her side. He said that there was no reason to have 2 showers, and if I felt that way about Judy, then I'm not welcome in their lives. Has the whole world gone mad? She keeps posting pictures of Mike as a baby and responding to people's comments and saying that she was so excited to have a baby in the family again. But she said this is going to give her a heart attack, and now she's on Facebook posting how she's having heart palpitations and doesn't know if she's going to make it through the night. Am I in the twilight zone? What is actually happening right now? Update 4. Hi all. Just here to say that we had a beautiful baby girl and I can't even believe it. Everything is so magical. I'm a mommy. Before she was born, we went complete NC with both Mike's mom and dad. We were both just so done with the craziness and really didn't want to bring her into this world with all of that. There was a super intense moment a few days after we brought her home when Judy tried to come by with some pre-made meals. But we have the Ring doorbell, so with this doorbell you can see who is at the door because there's a camera there and basically talk to the person through a microphone if you don't want to answer the door. So Mike sees that it's Judy. She's standing there with what looks like meals in tin foil. I look at Mike and I'm like, hell no, that could be poisoned. I wouldn't doubt it at this point. And he goes on the intercom and says that she needs to leave because we aren't answering the door and she's not welcome here. Her fake little smile instantly faded and she starts spitting back, saying that we can't keep her away from her baby and the baby needs her in her life and we're only jeopardizing the baby's growth by keeping her away from her grandma. Just psycho words. Mike says if she doesn't leave that he'll call the cops. She then throws the food at the door and rips off our Ring camera. Mike calls his dad and tells him what happens, and basically we are still NC after that. But all that's to say that we have our beautiful girl here now, and honestly, F Judy. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Fiancé forgets to hang up and I overhear him admit that he doesn't want to marry me. So I ran away the night before my wedding. I, 26F, was supposed to get married last week. But it didn't happen because I ran away the night before my wedding. I was engaged to my boyfriend, 26M, for 6 months, and we've been in a relationship for 3 years. My now ex-boyfriend and I have 2 kids together as well, twin boys aged 1. We didn't plan to have them, and my boyfriend was very against me having our kids in the first place. But I was very stubborn, and I told him that I'd be having them with or without him. I'd given him the option to leave, and I didn't even demand child support from him. I believe that I'm capable of raising my babies on my own no matter what, but I'd always had a very strong maternal instinct. For me, the timing just felt right. I was ready to be a mom, but he needed some time to come around. That's what he told me when I said that I was going to break up with him if he kept trying to push me into not having the baby. Only then did he seem to come around. He'd been a good partner throughout the pregnancy and a good father after their birth. We hadn't expected twins, and I'll admit I might not have been able to manage that by myself, so I think I was lucky that he stuck by. After my sons were born, he'd done everything that a father does, and 6 months later he proposed to me and I said yes. It was as if that whole episode where he demanded that I get rid of the babies never happened in the first place. He was that good. I think pregnancy had made me soften up as well. So all was forgiven, and I was ready to marry him after all. We'd already been together for 3 years and in a pregnancy, so I believed that this was the right time. For months we planned and I was really happy. My parents were also thrilled because they also liked my ex a lot. He was just the perfect guy. But then one night before the wedding, it was all ruined. I still can't believe that one phone call ruined a 3-year relationship, but I guess it saved me from entering what was bound to be an awful marriage. The day before our wedding, my ex and I were staying in separate places, as is customary. I was living in our house while he'd moved to his family's place, which was just a couple blocks away. After dinner, he called me to remind me that he loved me and that he couldn't wait to marry me, and that got me really emotional. We had a moment while we were on call, and then we said our goodbyes and I waited for him to hang up. Fortunately or unfortunately, he forgot to hang up. I think he must not have clicked the screen hard enough, which is a common habit of his. I stayed on the line as well because I'd heard his father speak to him, and just out of curiosity, I decided to eavesdrop on their conversation. Because his dad had just asked my ex if he was talking to me. While saying yes to his dad, my ex sounded really dejected and distant, and I could sense that something was off. The conversation that happened next still plays in my head on a loop, even though a whole week has passed. My ex's dad then asked him if he still felt the same way as he did 2 days ago, and he said yes. Then his mother joined the conversation as well and told him that no matter how he felt, he needed to go through with the wedding. My boyfriend seemed to flare up a little and told them that he would do whatever he wanted to and they couldn't push him around like this, to which his dad replied, saying that they couldn't force him to marry someone he didn't love, but they could cut him out of their will, so the choice was his. His mother then proceeded to lecture him about how now that he was a father, he needed to grow up and be responsible. It was bad enough that he had kids before marriage, but he could still save the situation by getting married instead of continuing to postpone it because he didn't feel ready. If he was ready to have kids, he was ready to get married and commit. That's what his mother said, and his dad agreed. My ex started talking about how this wasn't fair because he was literally being coerced into marrying me even though he was far from ready, just so that he wouldn't be cut out of their will. He told them that they were being very unfair and started complaining about how nobody in his life ever seems to care about whether he's ready for milestones or not, and he always ends up having to deal with stuff he's not prepared for. I didn't care whether he was ready to be a father or not, and neither did his parents, who forced him to stay with me in spite of the fact that the idea of kids terrified him, and now they were even pressuring him into getting married although he still didn't feel ready. He complained about how unfair we were all being to him, and then I guess he stormed out and left his phone in the room. His parents continued to discuss how irresponsible their son was being, and that's when I hung up. I was stunned and didn't have any idea what to do next. My boyfriend had only agreed to marry me and stay with me because his parents had threatened to cut him out of their will. That was definitely something I wanted to learn the night before we were supposed to get married. I couldn't even make sense of it for the next couple of minutes. Nothing about his behavior could have told me that he wasn't ready. Yes, we did have that argument when I'd found out I was pregnant initially, but after that, he'd always been a good boyfriend and father, so I literally had no idea that these were his true feelings. He definitely was a fabulous actor. I'll have to give him that. Once I managed to pull myself together, I decided to make a run for it. Thankfully, my kids were with me, and so I got into my car and drove to a hotel a little out of town. It was kind of late by the time I got there, and my kids were getting fussy, so I put them back to sleep, blocked my boyfriend and his family without any explanation, and that was it. I cried the entire night now that I knew that this past year had been nothing but a huge lie, and then finally fell asleep at around 4 o'clock in the morning. The wedding venue and everything else had been covered by my ex's parents, but they were loaded, so I didn't worry about the money that was being wasted. After all, this was all their idea, so the three of them could suffer the consequences. I was out of there before I'd gone to sleep. I texted all my friends and family that the wedding was off, and I'd explain everything later, and didn't give out any other details. I knew that they'd be annoyed at the wedding as well because I'd made it very clear that I didn't want them to go anywhere near my ex or his family, and didn't want them to reach out to them or respond to them either. And I trusted my people, so I knew they'd do what I asked them to without questioning it. I spent the day that I was supposed to get married in the hotel itself, eating away my feelings and playing with my sons since they were the only people I wanted around me at the time. I was devastated and heartbroken, but I had to put up a strong front for their sake, so that's what I did. After a day off, I decided to go back home to collect my things and move out of that house. I dropped my kids off at my parents' place before that, and when I finally showed up a day later, my ex reacted just the way I'd expected him to. He looked like he hadn't slept and seemed very panicky and concerned, and I still don't know how much of it was genuine and how much of it was an act. He asked me where I'd been and told me that he'd been worried sick about me. Without waiting for me to say anything, he then launched into his story about how he and his family had waited for hours the day before. He said that whatever I'd done was just unacceptable and that I owed them all an explanation and a public apology since cold feet were not an excuse to humiliate him and his family this way. I didn't say much. I just told him that I'd overheard the conversation that he'd had with his parents the other day. He looked confused for a few seconds, and then when he finally realized what I was referring to, he had the good sense to look ashamed. I didn't bother to explain or even talk to him after I said that. I went into the house while he waited out in the yard, collected the essentials, and left without another word. I had nothing to say to him honestly. He'd done what he felt was right, and now I was doing what I thought was right. I wasn't even interested in being a wife anymore. I just wanted to be a mother now, and a good one. That was almost a week ago, and we didn't speak after that, so I thought that this was the end for us. I had nothing to say to him, and he didn't either. That's what I'd thought, but a few hours ago, he showed up at my parents' place begging to speak to me. By now, I've obviously told my parents what had happened, and all my close friends know as well, so they were skeptical to let him in, but I agreed to speak to him one last time. I didn't want to let him in case we ended up fighting and screaming at each other because the babies had just fallen asleep, and I didn't want to wake them up, so we talked in the front yard itself. He apologized to me for everything that he put me through and told me that he really does love me even though he doesn't feel ready to marry me yet. He also said that he loves the kids as well, and in spite of everything that he said that night, he still wants to be a part of our lives. I didn't know what to say to that or even if I could trust him since he'd been lying to me and putting up an act for almost a year, so it was natural for me to have my doubts, but I said that I'd think about what we should do next. He doesn't want to break up yet, but still wants to work things out and give us a second shot without the interference of his parents, is what he said. I honestly don't know what to say to him. I would like my kids to have a relationship with their dad growing up, but I just can't trust him right now. As for myself, I really could do with a break because this week has been crazy and not in a good way. So what if I decide not to give our relationship a second chance? Date 1. Hey guys, I know it's been a while, but I've been very busy with work and kids and moving out, so I haven't had the time to update y'all. The support that has been pouring in has been overwhelming, and I truly am grateful that so many people have shown me such love. I really am so very thankful for all the advice that I've received since it's all been of great help to me. Yes, I've spoken to a lawyer regarding the custody arrangement. I want full custody of my kids because I've decided that I don't want to get back with my ex. Some people started sending me hateful messages and accused me of being a selfish mother just for considering getting back with him, which was stupid and judgmental. I'm a mother, but I'm also a human being, and only a week had passed since that night of the phone call. So of course, I hadn't fully moved on. It was a 3-year relationship for the love of God. I was very emotional and I really did love him, which is why my emotions got the better of me, and I considered getting back with him. I'm feeling a lot more stable now, so I know that no matter how I feel about the situation, I have to put myself and my kids first now, so I can't get back with him. There was just no need for all that hate and judgment in the first place, but it's the internet, so I should have seen it coming, I guess. And I'd started looking for a lawyer 2 days after I called off my wedding. It just took me a while to find someone that I was comfortable with and trusted fully. My ex and I had never spoken about custody and stuff like that because we never thought that such a day would even come. But now that we're done, I think it's time to take legal steps to ensure that nobody can take my kids away from me. I'm sure that he wouldn't even want to, but I'm not so sure about his parents. They're very conservative and kind of orthodox when it comes to stuff like this, so I'm certain they wouldn't appreciate their son not having custody of their grandchildren and will do everything in their power to stop it. I'm just preparing myself. I last spoke to my ex around 3 days ago, and we haven't been in touch since then, which just proves that no matter what he says, he's not ready to be with me and isn't willing to change. Whatever he said the other day about wanting to make things work was hollow and meaningless because otherwise, he would have at least checked up on me once, which he hasn't. So I know I'm making the right decision by not getting back with him, and honestly, there's just no trust between us anymore, and I'm not going to be with a man who doesn't want to be with me. This is for the best. I'm going to tell him my decision soon, and I just hope that he doesn't get mad about the custody arrangement because that's the last thing I need on my plate right now. Update 2. I finally told my ex that I don't want to get back with him and also said that I'm going to file for full custody just to give him a heads up. I'd expected him to be all right with it because as far as I knew, he confessed already that he wasn't ready for marriage or kids. So he should have felt grateful that I wasn't forcing him into something that he didn't feel prepared for. But he didn't take it well at all and instead started arguing with me and told me that I couldn't do this to him. He said that I could break up with him if I wanted to, but I couldn't take his kids away from him. Now that would have made sense if we had a normal relationship, but that's not the case as you guys already know. My ex didn't want kids in the first place. Even up until a week ago, he wasn't ready to be a father, but all of a sudden, he was fighting for his kids' custody. I just knew that there must be something fishy, and his parents are probably still trying to control him. He was totally panicking while he was arguing, and I was trying to calm him down because we were meeting at a restaurant, and I was getting really embarrassed about the scene that he was causing. After a while, he finally calmed down a little, and I tried to have a rational conversation with him because at this point, I just couldn't afford a drawn-out custody battle. I didn't have the money for that, and I absolutely didn't have the energy for it. I knew his parents would be able to afford the best damn lawyers as well, so even if I had the upper hand morally, they'd still manage to drag it out, so my best bet was to reason with him and just hope that he doesn't fight this. I tried to tell him that he'd been saying that he wasn't ready for kids up until a week ago, so this was the right way forward for all of us. I'd take care of the kids, which is what I wanted anyway, and he was free to live his life the way he wanted to, unburdened by marriage or kids. I thought that's what he wanted anyway, so this was the only solution, but he said that he changed his mind and now he felt ready to be a father. It just didn't add up in my opinion, and when he said that he was ready now, it just confirmed that there was definitely something fishy happening. If he hadn't felt ready to be a dad in 1 whole year, then there was no way he changed his mind in just a week. So I asked him if there was something that he wasn't telling me, and he admitted that the reason he was fighting so hard was because of what his parents had said. Surprise, surprise, after the wedding was called off and I told him that I knew everything, he told his parents about this, and they told him to try and make things right with me immediately, which is why approached me a week later. They'd said that they'd accepted that I wouldn't marry him since that was out of their control now, but they absolutely wouldn't let him lose custody of their grandkids. Once again, they'd threatened to cut him off if he didn't manage to convince me to go ahead with a joint custody arrangement. He was practically begging me by then to agree to have joint custody of the kids, but I was so disgusted that I just left. I couldn't believe that once again he was dancing to his parents' tunes, even though I'd given him an easy out. He didn't want to be a father. He didn't want to commit to me, but what he did want was his parents' money, which is why he was going to such lengths. If that's all he cared about, then I didn't want him anywhere near our kids. They deserved better. I didn't even want child support because I just didn't want him anything to do with me or my kids anymore. He clearly didn't have a spine and was willing to do anything it took just so that his parents wouldn't cut him out of their lives, and that was just so pathetic. It's been a few days since then, and I've blocked him everywhere once again because I don't even want to talk to him or see him. The last message he'd sent me was suggesting that we go ahead with a joint custody agreement, and he'd split his inheritance with me once his parents passed away. I can't believe that he's seriously suggesting this crap just for the sake of it. I guess this is what I get for falling for a spoiled brat in the first place. I'm a self-made woman, and I've worked my way up without anyone's help. Sure, my parents educated me, but we weren't very rich, so I had to rely on scholarships to pay for college, which meant that I had to work really hard for everything that I have now. And as for my ex, well, he was the only son of uber-rich parents. I don't think I need to say anything else. You guys know what kind of person I'm talking about. I thought that he changed once he started dating me, and he truly made me believe that he had, but I was wrong. He really is a brilliant actor because he had me fooled for a good 3 years, but now I can finally see him for what he truly is, and I don't want to stick around to find out more about him. I'm done, and I'm fine with raising my kids on my own. No father is still better than one who doesn't even want to be a father. Now I'm 100% sure that I did the right thing, and I hope that he comes to his senses and terminates his parental rights instead of turning this into a long custody battle. I'll keep praying. Update 3. Hey there. I'm here to finally share some good news with you guys. I know it's been a really long time since the last update, but I've been very busy. First things first, my babies and I have moved into a much smaller apartment, but at least I can call it mine, unlike the house that my ex and I used to live in. This place is near my parents' house as well, so they come over from time to keep an eye on the kids. I've also hired a full-time nanny to help me out because I can't stop working, obviously. I'm incredibly lucky that I can even afford that right now. My parents are obviously helping me out with the finances, and I'm so grateful for it. I know they didn't see this coming, and neither did I, but they're doing their best, and I'm really glad that I have such loving and supportive parents. Coming to the part that I know people are most interested in, my ex. So yeah, he signed away his parental rights. I don't know what came over him and what changed, but my best guess is that he decided to finally stand up to his parents, or maybe his parents just gave up. One of my friends told me that he's moved out of the house he used to live in, so I'm guessing it's the former. He apologized to me a few days back once more and said that he wanted to give me money as compensation, but I wasn't about to take money from my ex-boyfriend. I know a lot of you are going to say that this was a stupid move, but I don't really care. I wasn't kidding when I said that I didn't want anything to do with him anymore. I forgave him, but that doesn't mean that I have to accept any form of compensation from him. I just wanted to move on, and my parents and I are perfectly capable of raising my kids without his help, so I texted him back saying that it was all right, but I'd appreciate it if he didn't contact me anymore, and he's respected that so far. Right now, I'm only focused on my kids and giving them the best life that I possibly can. I have no time to be sad or angry at my ex anymore, and I just want to be a good mother to my kids now. That's it. Now on to the next story. Story 7. After 21 years of not knowing my bio parents, I finally met them, but my grandma tried to stop our reunion. I have always been a very happy kid, thanks to my parents, Robert and Michelle. From bedtime stories to family dinners, I grew up surrounded by their love and support. I was about to turn 21 last week. My parents decided to make it special by throwing a surprise birthday party for me. They gifted me tickets to a Taylor Swift concert, knowing how much I loved her. I was beyond thrilled and had a fun evening with my friends, singing to my heart's content at the concert. When I returned home after the party, I felt content and happy. The night had been magical, thanks to the love and thoughtfulness of my parents. I noticed a change in the atmosphere as I saw my parents having a quiet conversation in the kitchen that seemed serious, curious, and a bit worried. I asked them if something was wrong. They motioned for me to sit down, and I could sense that they wanted to talk about something serious. I joked if this was about my messy room, trying to lighten the mood, but my parents didn't smile, which made me a bit nervous. We sat down in the living room, and my parents took a deep breath and handed me an envelope. I looked at it curiously, thinking maybe they wanted to give me something again for my birthday, but my mom interrupted my thoughts. She told me that before I opened the letter, they wanted to tell me something very important, something they had been debating for a long time. At this point, I was filled with a mix of curiosity and a tinge of anxiety. I nodded, urging them to go on. My mom began to share a part of my life that had been a complete mystery to me until now. She revealed that they were not my real parents and had, in fact, adopted me from my bio parents when I was just 3 months old. As her words hung in the air, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. My mind raced to comprehend this revelation. My entire identity suddenly felt like pieces of a puzzle scattered on the floor. I turned to look at my dad, seeking reassurance, and he gave a somber nod. My parents began to share that they had tried to get pregnant for a very long time but had been unsuccessful. After years of disappointment, they decided to explore adoption. The waiting was agonizing, but after 2 long years, they finally got the call that changed their lives. A chance to welcome a baby into their family. This is how they met my biological parents, who had apparently got pregnant at just 17 years old. They were facing disapproval from their own parents, my bio-grandparents, who strongly opposed the early pregnancy. They explained that my bio-parents had a tough time after my birth and, with heavy hearts, had decided it was best for me to have a different life. My bio-parents loved how warm my adoptive parents were with me and had readily agreed to go forward with the adoption. Sitting there and hearing my parents talk felt surreal to me, and part of me wished it was all just a prank. They reassured me that keeping this information from me wasn't about deceit but stemmed from their love. They wanted me to experience a regular childhood without the weight of this knowledge. My mom pulled out an album, sharing that my bio mom had documented her pregnancy journey. She had also written a letter for me, which was inside the envelope that I had handed earlier. My mom had apparently asked my adoptive parents to give these to me when I turned 21. Taking a moment to gather my thoughts, I hesitated but eventually opened the envelope. The letter inside was a heartfelt message from my bio mom expressing her love for me. She expressed the joy she felt when she first discovered her pregnancy and couldn't wait to be a mother. She wrote how excited my dad was to hear the news, and they had excitedly planned their future. She candidly went on to share the challenges they both faced from their parents, who deemed that they were too young to be pregnant. They continued to struggle and fight for me, but ultimately had to yield to their parents' demands when they realized that they couldn't give me the life I deserved. After I was born, they eventually made the heartbreaking choice to give me up for adoption, which was the hardest decision they ever had to make. She continued to apologize for not being there for me and hoped that I had found happiness and love with my adoptive parents. In the end, she mentioned that after I turned 21, if I wanted, then I could come and meet her, and she would be ready to answer all my questions. Tears welled up in my eyes as I read her words, realizing the complexity of emotion she must have felt while writing this. My adoptive parents sat quietly, giving me the space to process all this. As I flipped through the photo album, a wave of emotions washed over me. My hands etched the smile on my mother's face as I noticed the similarities that we had. I noticed how I had the same curly hair as my dad. I had always wondered about my hair, as neither of my adoptive parents have curly hair, but it all made sense to me now. Each picture of my biological parents told a story, the smiles reflecting their joy, the challenges etched on their faces. For the first time, I held a connection to people I had never met. My parents then revealed that they could disclose my bio parents' identity if I wished to meet them. I responded with a nod, acknowledging that I deserved to meet them and ask a million questions going on in my head. The prospect of meeting them stirred up a potent blend of emotions, leaving me caught between the intense curiosity to know more and the uncertainty of how this unexpected reunion might unfold. My parents shared that my bio mom was Rose, age 38, and my dad was James, also age 39. They told me that they could set up a meeting with them in the coming weeks if that's what I needed. I nodded, a mix of excitement and nervousness bubbling within me. My parents, understanding the weight of the situation, again emphasized that whatever choice I made, they would stand by me. I expressed that I would like to meet them and talk to them further about my childhood. Over the next few days, I found myself grappling with a mix of anticipation and trepidation, unsure of how this significant chapter in my life would unfold. My mom shared that my bio mom was thrilled about the idea and readily agreed to meet me over the weekend, but my bio dad had not responded just yet. As the weekend approached, I felt more and more nervous by the minute. I was still coming to terms with the news about my bio parents, and in just 2 days, I would be meeting my bio mother in person, which was nerve-wracking, honestly. Little did I know, fate had other plans for this chapter of my life. Today, my parents called me downstairs to meet someone. Intrigued, I headed down and found an older woman standing at our doorstep. The woman motioned for me to come closer. She mentioned her name was Linda and that she was my biological grandmother. As we shook hands, glancing at my parents, I saw they were just as surprised as me to see her. My bio grandma then asked if we had recently reached out to my bio mother, Rose, and expressed a desire to meet her. I nodded, saying that my parents had reached out to Rose as I wanted to meet her. Sensing some tension, my parents suggested we sit down with her and discuss this openly. Linda then shared that my bio mother was very excited to meet me this weekend and had been talking to her about it, which is how she found out about our upcoming meeting. My bio grandma then solemnly asked why I wanted to meet her after all these years. My mom explained to her that they had contacted my bio mom as she had stated during the adoption that if after turning 21, I wished to meet her, I could. Linda shook her head, expressing regret that they shouldn't have done that. Confused, my brows furrowed as she began to explain that my bio mother had already given me up. Hence, there was no need for me to see her now after all these years. Hearing those words felt like a punch to my gut. My dad interjected and asked what she meant by that. Linda then went on to say that she had always regretted that her daughter got pregnant at such an early age. She described Rose, my bio mom, as a brilliant student until she met James, my bio dad. Linda painted James as someone not quite up to par, distracting Rose from her studies. Against her wishes, they started dating and eventually got pregnant during college. Rose's pregnancy became a source of shame for my grandparents, and initially, they refused to accept her. It was only when James pleaded with them to let Rose stay in their house until she gave birth that they reluctantly agreed. Throughout my bio mother's pregnancy, my grandparents insisted that she give me up, no matter how much she pleaded. They refused to support her. Eventually, she did give me up, simplifying all of their lives, according to Linda. Rose and James didn't last long as a couple afterward. My mother eventually went on to graduate as a valedictorian from college. Currently, she's married, and she and her husband have 2 children together. I listened to all of this quietly. Linda then turned her attention to me, saying that I should be happy and content with the parents I have now instead of trying to destroy my bio mother's life by contacting her. I asked her how I was doing that when I simply wanted to meet with her and talk. Linda said that my bio mother's current husband had no idea about me and she would like my mother to keep it that way. According to Linda, my mother had brought only shame to the family by getting pregnant with me before marriage, so she didn't want anyone else to find out about it. Linda audaciously inquired if I was seeking financial assistance, leaving me dumbfounded by the boldness of her question. Hearing this, my parents exchanged angry glances, clearly upset by Linda's judgmental comments. My dad spoke up, defending my right to know about my origins and questioning why Linda was so harsh in her views. Linda, in turn, responded defensively, insisting that it was for the best and that my bio mother's life had moved on without me in it. She insisted that I wasn't going to get anything by meeting her after all these years. Despite my parents' attempts to keep the conversation civil, emotions were running high. I, caught in the middle, tried to maintain a calm demeanor, expressing my desire to meet my bio mother without causing any harm. Linda, however, seemed adamant in her belief that reconnecting would only bring shame and disruption to her daughter's life. The tension in the room kept rising as my parents reiterated that Rose had indeed agreed to meet me. They insisted that if she had changed her mind, it should be Rose herself communicating that, not Linda. My parents argued vehemently, stating that Linda had no right to interfere in my desire to connect with my bio mom. Frustrated, Linda finally stood up, making it clear that she disagreed with our decisions and was leaving. My parents, though angry, tried to reassure me that I had their support no matter what choice I made, even if Linda disapproved. I am sitting in my room, lost in words. I can't fathom what prompted my bio grandma to come to our house and say these things to my face. It has left a bitter taste in my mouth, and I am afraid my bio mother might feel the same way too. While I hold no expectations from Rose, I will be a bit hurt if she makes me feel as unwanted as Linda has made me feel. I also feel guilty, realizing my parents reached out to her solely because of my desire to connect, potentially impacting her current family. So, I wonder if I am wrong for having reached out to my bio mother and potentially jeopardizing her life with her current husband and children. Should I cancel our plans to meet and leave things as they are? Update 1. My bio dad reached out to my parents yesterday after Linda came to meet us. I was feeling really down, but my parents shared that my bio dad, James, had replied back to their message and would love to meet me. Apparently, he had been overseas for work and missed their initial Facebook message. Knowing he's eager to meet me brings relief and adds a touch of happiness to my spirits. I am supposed to meet Rose tomorrow, but I am really nervous and still unsure. I have been wondering if I should cancel the plans. I am afraid that Linda might turn up during our meeting and start yelling at me again. Wrestling with these thoughts is overwhelming, and I am grappling with the decision to either face this head-on or reconsider the plans altogether. Update 2. It's been a few days since I gave an update to my last story. I finally met Rose and James during the weekend, as I had mentioned earlier. I went to the cafe thinking that I was only supposed to meet Rose. As I nervously entered the cafe, my emotions were a whirlwind. I looked around and recognized them almost instantly, as it was like staring into a mirror. There they were, my bio parents, waiting for me with a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty etched on their faces. Rose, my bio mom, smiled warmly, her eyes reflecting a blend of emotions: love, curiosity, and perhaps a touch of anxiety. James, my bio dad, stood up to greet me with a genuine expression that mirrored both excitement and apprehension. Our initial interaction was a mix of awkward smiles and hesitant words. Rose broke the ice by asking if I had any questions encouragingly. She looked at me as I hesitated before asking why they decided to give me up despite facing financial troubles. Rose began to explain that at the tender age of 17, navigating college life, she found herself with no support system as a first-time mother. She and James had earnestly tried to secure employment, but the demands of their intensive classes made it challenging to find a job that could sustain their basic needs. James added that his parents had passed away long ago, leaving him with no one to turn to for assistance. Tears welled up in Rose's eyes as she continued to stress that she had been willing to sacrifice her career, but her parents vehemently opposed her going so far as to threaten to cut her off entirely. It became clear to her that she wouldn't be able to provide me with the life I deserved. James interjected, expressing their commitment to providing me a better life, one they believed they couldn't offer at that time. He expressed how extensively they had discussed the adoption situation, and it had left both of them emotionally scarred. He shared that they couldn't overcome the pain after giving me up, ultimately leading to their separation. Rose, now silently crying, reached out and held my hands, a mixture of sorrow and connection lingering in the air. I could sense the deep sadness and regret in both of them. Curious, I asked them if they ever regretted giving me up. James, with a heavy heart, admitted, every day, and broke down emotionally. Witnessing their pain unfold before me made me feel bad. It was strange. Just moments ago, they were strangers, yet now as they cried, I could feel a connection with them that I couldn't explain. To lighten the mood, I asked them to share the story of how they met. Rose, warmly smiling, perhaps reminiscing about their fond memories, shared how James had persistently pursued her for 5 months before she finally agreed to go on a date with him. James joked about finding every excuse to spend time with her, admitting to spending hours in the library just hoping for a chance to talk to her. He thought he would have had to pursue her even more, but thankfully, she said yes. Rose blushed at this and we all shared a laugh. Watching my bio parents laugh and share about their college days like two giddy teenagers warmed my heart. As they continued to share stories, the initial tension in the air began to dissipate, replaced by a growing sense of understanding and connection. They talked about how they eventually fell in love with each other. Rose reminisced about the day she found out she was pregnant and had revealed her pregnancy to James. She described how he leapt out of the chair in joy to hug her, despite her initial hesitation about how he would react. James reassured her that he would do anything for her. I realized that even though they couldn't keep me and had to eventually give me away, I was a product of their love, and I couldn't ask for anything more than that. I mustered the courage to express my gratitude for the photo album and the heartfelt letter. Rose, visibly moved, shared how she had carefully documented every moment during her pregnancy, hoping that one day I would get to see it. James chimed in, saying that he helped take her pictures, hoping that one day they could show those pictures to me together. Hearing him say this, I gulped back tears. Rose then asked me how my life had been until now. I told her that my adoptive parents never made me feel like I wasn't their child. Hence, it was a complete shock when they revealed the existence of my bio parents on my 21st birthday. I continued expressing how they have provided me with everything I ever wanted and more. Rose and James sighed in relief. They shared that they had spent countless hours meeting parents and had eventually decided on my adoptive parents when they saw how kind they were. They admitted they were apprehensive about how I might perceive them given the circumstances surrounding my adoption. However, they were grateful to hear that my adoptive parents had created a loving and supportive environment for me. I then cautiously asked Rose if she had any recent communication with her mother. She had a puzzled expression on her face as she questioned how I knew about her mother. With a sigh, I revealed the unexpected visit her mother made to our home 2 days ago. Rose's eyes widened in surprise as I shared the events of what happened. I described how Linda had confronted my adoptive parents, expressing disapproval and discouraging any contact between me and her. Rose's expression shifted from confusion to concern, and she immediately got enraged that her mother had tried to dissuade me from meeting her. She apologized for her mother's behavior and asked me to convey the same to my parents. She continued to explain that her mother had always been controlling towards her all her life. I nodded in understanding, as I knew this was a very complex situation. James seemed enraged also and assured me that I hadn't made a mistake by reaching out to them. He conveyed that both he and Rose had wanted to meet me for a long time but were hesitant to intrude on my life. They were overjoyed when my adoptive parents reached out to them. Rose chimed in, agreeing to this, and told me that she had already made up her mind to talk to her husband about me, as she felt no shame about me. She continued to tell me that if I wanted, in due time, she would love to introduce me to her family. As her words settled in, relief washed over the lingering doubts I had about disrupting her life. Knowing that she not only welcomed the connection but also desired to be a part of my life felt like mending a bridge between two worlds. Her openness and sincerity struck a chord, easing the uncertainty that had shadowed my decision to meet her. Rose continued to open up about her current family, expressing the challenges and joys of her life. She spoke about her husband and their children. Her voice trembled as she revealed how similar I looked to her eldest child and that I had the same eye color. James, in turn, talked about his busy life as an investment banker who traveled around the globe. He hadn't yet had the time to settle down and start a family but did have a longtime girlfriend named Jenny. Our conversation moved through a spectrum of emotions. Raw honesty, shared regrets, and moments of laughter as we discovered common interests and traits. They showed genuine interest, asking about my friends and even inquiring about my current boyfriend. They expressed their sincere desire to build a relationship with me at a pace that was comfortable for me, and I nodded in agreement. Despite the years that had elapsed since our lives diverged, there was a palpable connection, a shared sense of belonging, and the acknowledgement of the intricate web that bound us. As we said goodbye that evening, I felt a bunch of emotions, thankful for the chance to meet and the realization that this meeting was just the start of something new. Since that day, James and Rose have continued to stay in touch with me. After meeting my bio parents, my adoptive parents heard everything I had to say. They were glad that James and Rose had met me in the cafe together and had been so open to all my questions. In their eyes, I could see their love assuring me that no matter what happens in the future, I have their support. They continue to help me navigate through the mix of emotions that has come with this unexpected chapter in my life. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update. Thanks to everyone's support and patience throughout all this. It's been a crazy journey, but I'm glad to inform you that everything's going well. In the midst of all the crazy feelings and revelations, I realized I needed some extra help to figure things out. A bunch of people suggested therapy, so I decided to give it a try. Going to therapy is like having this safe space where I can spill all my thoughts without any judgment whatsoever. It has helped me deal with all the messy emotions and questions that have come with reconnecting with my bio parents. Therapy has been my way of untangling the knots and figuring out what I really want from these relationships. Rose has been awesome about this whole reunion thing. She has not only opened up to me about her life, but has also introduced me to her family, just like she said she would. It happened about 2 months ago when she invited me over for lunch. Walking into her home, I was feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. Meeting her husband and kids made everything so real, and I started to get really anxious, but they were all very welcoming, and her eldest child, Dorothy, who's got the same eye color as me, also cracked a joke that instantly broke the ice. We sat around the table, sharing stories and laughing. It was a pretty chill afternoon, and it meant a lot to me. They made me feel like I was a part of their world. I sometimes meet up with Dorothy for tennis lessons whenever I can during my crazy college schedule. As for Linda, Rose had a stern talk with her mother and asked her to mind her own business. She doesn't talk to Linda as much after finding out how she behaved with me and my adoptive parents. My bio dad, James, has continued to be in touch with me. Whenever he's back from his trips, he makes an effort to meet up. We catch up over coffee or sometimes just chill at a park. The coolest part is he's got this knack for telling wild stories from his adventures around the world. He also never forgets to bring me chocolates or diaries, and I really appreciate these thoughtful gestures. My folks, Robert and Michelle, have been rock stars through all this. They have been there listening, giving their thoughts, and just being the awesome loving parents they have always been to me. Looking back on the last 6 months, I realize how lucky I am to have both sets of parents. Each parent contributes something unique to my life, and I have found a way to connect with each one of them in my own way. The journey is far from over, and I am aware the road ahead might hold more challenges and surprises. Yet I am grateful for the opportunity to have met with my bio parents. It has been interesting to discover the depth of love between people that transcends beyond both biological and adoptive ties. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Sister's friend mocked my mental health struggles in her wedding speech, so I left early. Now my sister is mad, and I'm thinking of cutting ties with her, but she grabbed my neck and it triggered my PTSD. At 27F, I was a bridesmaid at my older sister's wedding last week. The wedding was beautiful, and everything seemed perfect until the reception. During the reception, the maid of honor, who has been my sister's best friend since childhood, gave her speech. It was emotional and all, but then she made a joke about how I was the family screw-up who finally managed to do something right by not messing up my bridesmaid duties. Everyone laughed, but I didn't find it funny. For context, I've had a rough few years. I struggled with my mental health and dropped out of college for a while. I've since gotten my life back on track, but it's still a sensitive topic for me. Hearing that joke in front of all our family and friends wasn't funny at all. My sister's best friend and I never really got along, but still, I never expected something like this from her, especially as the day wasn't about me at all. Then why bring me up in the speech? I tried to stay composed, but I felt the tears coming, so I quietly left the reception and went outside to collect myself. My sister followed me out and asked what was wrong. When I told her, she said it was just a joke and she meant nothing bad. I tried to go back inside, but I just couldn't, and I ended up leaving the wedding early. My parents understand why I was upset, but my sister is angry with me. I do feel terrible for leaving, but I also feel like I had the right to feel hurt and humiliated. Comment. Mo was being a mean girl. Her point was to be and she was. Her speech should have been about the couple who just got married. There was no reason to bring you into her speech at all, except to be mean. Mo should be ashamed of herself, as she is the a-hole here. Your sister not seeing this and her words to you also make her an a-hole. I'm sorry your sister was crappy to you. Maybe show her this thread. Opie. This is what I tried to tell my sister. I thought about it again, but I still can't seem to find a reason for her bringing me into her speech. Comment. I bet there's another side of this story. Oop. Every story has another side. What am I supposed to do about that? Call my sister and ask her if her best friend is up for posting about her side? You think I posted on Reddit for advice without putting myself out there? Then what's the point? Comment. From the way you describe your sister's reaction, her BFF feels free to belittle you because your sister always goes along with it. I wouldn't be surprised if her maid of honor ran that joke by your sister for approval beforehand. If your sister considers insulting you in a public setting like that to be a joke, you can bet money that they have shared similar jokes between them before. The shots about taking your meds show CIS doesn't have a lot of empathy for your situation or respect for you as a person. I don't see her apologizing if that's the case. I could be wrong in my suspicions, but everything you describe tells me I'm not. Comment. No one wants to be the butt of a joke, and the friend should have run the speech by your sister prior. Very poor taste. Comment. Or sister did give the thumbs up on it. Comment. And I'm sorry you had to go through that. Mocking someone's mental health is never okay in any circumstance, but in front of their whole group of family and friends is just despicable. Opie. She will just ask me if I've been skipping on my meds. Comment. Your sister sounds like she isn't a whole lot better than her friend Gold and Green. Too bad someone else from the audience didn't yell out, "Not funny." Comment. Oh, I'm sure there are guests that clocked this whole interaction and Op leaving. She's probably rightfully embarrassed and projecting it onto Op. If I was a guest at this wedding, my opinions of MO and bride would absolutely be lowered. Edit. I said nothing at the moment because I didn't want to cause a scene on my sister's special day, and I can't reason with her right now because she will just ask me if I haven't been taking my meds lately. That's what she does when she's angry with me. So I'm giving her some time to maybe realize how her best friend's joke was out of line. Edit. Someone asked me if my sister's best friend and I argued before / that I give her a reason to do this. My sister's best friend and I never went past hi. She told me before a few years ago that she in general doesn't feel comfortable around someone struggling mentally because, in her head, God only knows what they're capable of. Since she said this / to this day, I just try to avoid her. Update. Hi. Thanks to everyone who took the time to comment on my post and gave their opinion sluddice without being too harsh. I apologize if my update is messy or confusing. I'll try to cover everything. The same day I posted, my dad called to check up on me and see if my sister and I had talked things out. When I told him no, he said it's better if we talk about it now and assured me that I have nothing to apologize for. If my sister thinks she has nothing to apologize for, then the least she can do is make her best friend apologize or fully realize that the joke was out of line. By the way, my brother and I met 4 days ago, and he told me that Bill, my sister's husband, didn't like the way the MO called me a screw-up in front of everyone, and some of those who laughed voiced later that they did so out of nervousness. On Monday, my sister called me to talk. When I made it to her place, her best friend was on the phone and didn't put it down for a second. My sister started by saying that just a few years ago, I would have laughed hard and not taken the joke as an insult. I told her maybe some laugh because they don't know the reason she called me a screw-up. For context, when I was 16, something happened, and that's why I struggled mentally really badly between 16 to 18. When I was 17, I was diagnosed with PTSD and later with depression and anxiety. Since then, I don't like it when someone touches my head, especially my hair in the back of my head / neck. My sister knows everything. During our conversation, my sister did most of the talking. At some point, I felt like my sister had called me just to blame me again without trying to understand my perspective. When I tried to talk, she put her hand on the back of my neck and pulled me toward her with each sentence, as if to say, "Do you understand?" Or, "Okay." I hated it and felt irritated. I honestly kept thinking if I pushed her away, would I be in the wrong? Would they just call me mental and tell family I got physical? I tried to leave, but she insisted that no one was leaving until we sort this out. She told her best friend to just apologize. She refused and reminded my sister that I was the reason her husband got angry at her on their wedding day because I couldn't take a joke. And when I tried to explain why, edit, I told her if she had focused her speech on the bride and groom, then maybe he wouldn't have had a reason to be angry. She refused to listen and brushed my words off. She said, "Yeah, whatever, sorry." I was glad it was finally over, and as I was about to leave, I heard her say, "Can't take a joke that everyone knows is true." Both of them laughed, but my sister stopped mid-laugh and apologized. I didn't say anything and left. I think I've had enough. I know I've had a few rough years. I dropped out of college for a while, fine, but I've since gotten my life back on track. My parents helped me through it all and never made me feel like a burden. At first, I was on some strong meds that made me feel tired and sleepy most of the time. After a while, I started to feel a little better with therapy and my family support. During that period, it was me, my parents, and my brother. My sister was 3 hours away for a job and used to visit sometimes and would often bring her best friend along with her. Looking back, I don't want to say she hates me, but I know she felt ashamed to have a family member struggling with mental health issues. I don't know how to explain this. I've made up my mind and decided to go and see for now. If my parents and my brother, who were there when I was going through it all, never made me feel that they're ashamed of me, then why would she? I'm still on some meds, but feel much better than before. I have a stable job, my own place, and friends who love me for who I am. I can say I'm proud of myself a little. I love my family to death and tried to maintain a relationship with my sister all these years. But I'm trying to improve myself, not constantly be reminded of what I was a few years ago. Comments. Comment. This is more than enough emo to just go no contact. She knows about the trauma you went through and blatantly weaponized it against you, and that's just disgusting and cruel. I'm sorry you had to deal with this op, and I'm glad you are at a point in life where you can enforce your boundaries and appreciate how far you've come. Future reference, if you ever decide to be around or communicate with your sister, I don't think you should be alone with her. You should be able to have a third party that also knows about your past trauma and boundaries there to act as witness and a mediator if she pulls that kind of again. Comment. Op, I know, but I don't think I will be around her anytime soon. I'm still a little shaken by the fact that she knows everything and still grabbed me by the back of my neck to prove her point. Comment. She did it to hurt you. I'm sorry, but she was. Make sure you tell your parents this is why you were in C only. Comment. I also think she was trying to get up to have a negative reaction, so she could twist it and say, "I told you so." That's some cruelty right there. Comment. Yep. Though she was trying to get her to overreact so she can make herself a victim and get people on her side. Reminds me of reality abuse. Comment. The relationship is over irrespective of similar genetic material. The sister is jealous. She wants to be the main character, and the GF the sidekick at the expense of op. Everybody would be happier, and there would be less drama with NC. Comment. You should never feel guilty about cutting toxic people out of your life, family or not. After all, you are in charge of your own happiness, so if she does not bring you joy, why bother? She is an awful, horrible person anyway, so you're not missing out on much. Comment. No loss on going in C with your sister, since she thinks your mental health issues are funny. When you roll around with pigs, you're gonna get muddy. Your sister is muddy. Comment. Your sister has chosen her friend over you. She hasn't apologized. No one is taking accountability. That should be you need to go very LC or NC with this sister. Your parents should be covering this and really championing you. MO should be pride by the rest of your family. Opie. I've decided to go and see. I want to move on from what happened and everything she said to me before. She said a lot of hurtful things in the past, but the way she tried to shut me up by grabbing me by the back of my neck, I just can't get over it. She doesn't love/respect me enough to not use that against me. Comment. How would the MO know that this happened to her? Opie. She brought her best friend home when I was still covered in bruises. Of course, I didn't want to see anyone other than my family, but I was in no condition to voice my wants. I'm sure I left my room at least 2 to 3 times, and she saw me. Besides, she brought her best friend along when it was better for me to not interact with anyone but family. I'm certain she told her everything. Comment. I would tell your family exactly what transpired and send your new bill a link to these posts. You've overcome so much. Keep moving forward and cut the toxic out of your life. Best wishes and many, many blessings for your future happiness and success. Opie, thank you. I'm going to see my parents tomorrow along with my brother. They will probably ask me how it went, and I will tell them exactly what happened. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Husband and Phil were obsessed with the idea I'd die in childbirth like my Mill did. I left because of this creepy behavior, divorced him. Now I'm alive with my baby girl. My husband and I are expecting our first child, which I knew would be a really sensitive issue as his own mother died in childbirth with him. We met with a marriage counselor to talk things through at the beginning, and he swears he's been seeing his own therapist twice a month throughout my pregnancy. I don't want to call him a liar, but I'm fairly sure he's either not going or not talking about the big issue. He and his father, a hugely active part of our lives, are completely convinced that I'm going to die in childbirth. They won't openly admit it, but their behavior has reached the point where it's constantly making me feel stressed and uncomfortable. When it was husband saying, "Please make sure your life insurance is up to date," and "I'd like you to meet with a lawyer and draft a will," I was like, that's kind of intense, but okay, if that makes you feel better. When husband asked me to go through all of my possessions and inventory what I wanted to be saved for the baby versus what I would want to be returned to my family in the event of my death, I put my foot down and said, absolutely not. Too morbid, no way. My Phil, who lives a few blocks away and eats dinner with us 2 to 4 nights a week, got on my case about how I was making things difficult for my husband in the event that he will be a grieving widower with a newborn. I'm just going to add here that I've had a completely complication-free pregnancy and have no reason to think I will die screaming in the coming weeks. When I tell my husband this, he calls me paranoid, but I feel like my Phil wants me to die. His whole life identity for the past 35 years has been amazing single dad, never dated or had close friends or even hobbies really, and it seems like he's looking forward to being able to guide my husband through what he went through. At this point, I'd honestly be happy to never see my Phil again, and I certainly don't want him in the delivery room, especially since he told me he was putting his foot down about me not being allowed to have an epidural or laughing gas. He's a commanding presence, and I know that whatever he wants in the delivery room, he will get. I know people will say O&D nurses would never let that happen, but you haven't met this man. My husband, in addition to backing his dad on everything, acts like my due date is my death date and is completely pulled away from me. Every minute with him is morbid, stressful, and a reminder that our marriage seems to be crumbling. No matter how many times I tell him his behavior makes me stressed and upset, it's just getting worse, and I do not want it around me while I'm concentrating on giving birth. Do I owe it to my husband to let him stress and upset me during labor? Is his presence at the birth more important than a safe and healthy delivery? My therapist says no, but this whole thing has been so weird. I feel like I need some outside perspective. Comment. But Emo, it's time to be frank. Tell him you want to go to his next therapy appointment. Then you need to explain to the therapist what has been going on and that you are seriously considering banning your husband from the delivery room. Comment. Giving someone other than the husband the right to make medical decisions during this period. Husband is clearly not in his right mind at the moment, and I wouldn't trust him to make decisions in Op's best interest if Op is unconscious. Comment. Damn it, Jeanette, this not only kick them out, but make sure you have someone who will be in there with you and helping you through this, especially with the pressure you will get from your husband, even if he isn't in the room, your support and keep speaking for you even when you are in the heart of labor. Comment. Can you employ a doula? Be nice for everyone if you had someone around with positive experiences of birth. Plus, they are just the nicest people ever. Comment. I completely second this. I was against a doula in the beginning when my wife mentioned it. Why do we need this white hippie witch lady in the room? What's she going to do? A lot, way more than I could or would have ever asked of her. She was ridiculously nice, helpful, calming. Sage advice rained in. My Mill, who was determined to keep my wife from getting an epidural, and actually got her on board with it and so much more. Thought it was over once we had the baby, but nope, 2 months later. This wonderful woman arranged a meeting at our home, brought food from our favorite restaurant, and helped us clean let us get some rest. Grand total, I think we paid $750 for her services, and this also included monthly childbirth classes leading up to the birth and prenatal yoga. She even arranged a payment plan which helped a ton. Get a doula. 7 FTHS would recommend. Comment. WTF is a doula? White hippie witch lady. Comment. They're more than just a hippie. They're there to advocate for the mother and ensure that she is kept informed of what's going on, can make informed decisions, and then make sure that the mother's decisions are heard by both staff and family instead of being steamrolled. Most women are not aware of the choices they have in their birthing health care. So the doula is there to be an informed advocate as well as emotional support. Comment. Jesus Christ, I would not only not allow them in the room, but if I were you, I would consider how safe you are in this marriage. NTA. Comment. Same, I felt terrible saying it, but I mentioned in my comment that she should really be wary during her recovery period. They sound unhinged. I thought maybe I was biased SL projecting because of all the mentally unstable SL manipulated people I've come in contact with. Update. This is a long overdue update. I know I worried everyone, and I'm grateful every day for every ounce of concern that was sent my way. To get right into it, I was unfortunately right about my suspicion that my ex wasn't going to therapy. I sat down with him and very firmly put my foot down about my mother being my support person in the delivery room alongside him, and at my thankfully Atil was not to be anywhere near the delivery room. I also was very adamant that I was getting an epidural and ex-Phil had no say about any medical procedures I may take. I also told him that I was seeking my own therapist as his and his father's actions were worrying me. My ex-husband didn't take it well, to put it simply. I had never heard him shout at me like that, and it scared me a little. My fury outweighed my fear not long after, however. He told me I didn't need a therapist, that he was just trying to be prepared. I admittedly lost my temper and told him that I wasn't going to die. It wasn't my fault his father's trauma wormed its way into his head, and that he needed to fix it without taking it out on me. He yelled at me that he didn't need therapy. That caught me a little off guard. I asked him why he went to his therapist and was given advice about my death if he felt he didn't need it. His expression gave it away, and he kept not long after. It turns out there was no therapist. It was just his dad. During the times he was supposed to be at therapy, he was with his dad. I'm still fuming. In the end, I gave him a choice. He could either go to therapy or I was leaving. I had enough of their delusions. He chose to refuse therapy, and I packed my things and stayed with my mother. At that point, I still wasn't planning on divorce. I had hoped that we could possibly fix our marriage, as naive as it sounds, but my ex decided that if he couldn't convince me to go back, then he would get his father and the rest of his family to do it. I had to change my number due to the amount of harassment and vital they hurled at me. In the end, it was just my mother in the delivery room as I gave birth. I'm thankful for the nursing staff. They were a godsend, and I felt safe that neither my ex nor his father would get even remotely close to the room without my say-so. The divorce is still ongoing, so I can't give too many details on that front, but I have hopes that we can work out a tentative co-parenting agreement. My ex isn't a bad father. He loves our baby girl, but our relationship is done. And as long as I live, Atil will never be near my daughter. I'll wrap this up. I've got an adorable little toddler tugging at my leg ATM. I'm alive, I'm happy, and I've got my baby in my arms. Life is good. Comments. Comment. I always wondered about the August post. It was so morbid. Happy to hear she's alive and away from those horrible men. Comment. Jesus, is this the one where people were speculating in the replies that husband and Phil were planning to kill her in childbirth? I always wondered what happened. All told, this is probably the best possible outcome because the whole story was messed up beyond belief. Comment, I thought the possibility of the Phil and husband planning to kill her in childbirth was a little far-fetched, but it just seems to me that Phil and husband were so committed to their idea of her dying in childbirth that while they probably wouldn't actively cause her death, they would embrace the chance to allow her to die by passively denying her care. Comment. If denied care just had her deal with pain either chronic or acute but not kill her, well, that's just her punishment for living, and hey, X can still be the good husband supporting his disabled wife. Comment. I'm of the opinion that any man who says their wife shouldn't have an epidural should pick from the list of things that women have reported are as painful as childbirth and subject themselves to it for 24 hours with no painkillers. Compound fracture of the femur would be an easy one for him to inflict on himself. Theoretical dick jokes. Men like that think that we should be able to endure the pain without assistance. BC our body is are made to do this, so it can't be that bad. Now on to the next story. Story 10. Dumped my boyfriend for suddenly buying expensive stuff. Then my sister started dating him and got a beach house. Turns out he stole millions from his uncle who passed away. Hi, so around 2 weeks ago, I, 27F, broke up with my boyfriend, 28M, of 1 year, and my sister, 24F, started dating him. I'll address them as Leo and Rachel. I've pretty much raised my sister on my own ever since our parents passed away when I was 16 and she had just turned 13. They'd been driving back from a party kind of late at night, and a truck plowed into them, and that was it. We moved in with our aunt after that, and she did try to look after us, but she was more busy with work, so it was just me and Rachel, and I became really protective of her. After I started working at around 18, Rachel moved out and started living with me so she could finish her degree. For the past 3 years, ever since she graduated, both of us have been working, and we've been living separately since her workplace is quite far away from where I live. I never went to college because I really wanted to start earning because I did not want to be a burden on my aunt, even though she had never made us feel that way. But I wanted to do something for myself and be independent. For a couple of years after I became an adult, I worked numerous jobs, and 2 years back, I finally started my own business with a few of my friends from school. We run a clothing line, and I would say that we are moderately successful at the moment, but we want to get bigger. Rachel went to college and got a degree in economics and then went on to work as an accountant. I met Leo through my friends, and he works in advertising, so all of us had a kind of similar financial situation. All 3 of us were doing well enough in our lives. But about 3 months ago, Leo started spending money like nobody's business. He started giving me expensive gifts, all stuff from high-end or luxury brands, and he was also buying these kinds of things for himself as well. And I was really confused because if he was in a similar financial situation as me, then there was no way he would be able to afford all of this. I asked him what was going on several times, but he just told me that he had been promoted and that's why he could afford it. But I did not believe it because even with a promotion, I did not think it would be feasible for him to suddenly act like he was the richest man on earth. My suspicions only got stronger when he bought a new car, and within a couple of weeks, he purchased a vacation home on the beach as well. I knew for a fact that none of it had come for cheap, and I told him to his face that I did not believe the fact that he had received emotion all of a sudden, and that's why he was able to buy all of this. I asked him to tell me the truth because if he was involved in anything shady, I did not want to be a part of it. He tried to convince me that he was telling me the truth, that he genuinely had received a promotion, but I still found it difficult to believe. So I decided to contact his coworkers around 2 weeks back and ask them what was going on. Leo and I had been together for just 1 year, so I wasn't exactly close to his coworkers, and they were really surprised when I reached out to them. But when I asked them about Leo and whether he had received any promotion of any sort, they were truthful and told me that he had not indeed received any promotion. And in fact, he had been taking his work way more lightly than he had been in the past. That made me very suspicious, and I knew instantly that something was going wrong. So after I called his coworkers, I called him up and I invited him to my house so I could speak to him. And I guess his coworkers had told him that I had called some of them up, and as soon as he showed up at my house, he started fighting with me, saying that it was not my place to speak to his coworkers and try to embarrass him. He said that I was being paranoid and tried to gaslight me into believing that I was overthinking this. But I knew that deep down something had definitely gone wrong here, and I told him that I could not be with him anymore because obviously he had been lying to me. The money that he had been spending had definitely not come from a promotion, and the only other alternative I could think of was him being involved in something shady, and I did not want to be part of that. We broke up, and he was pretty upset with me because I had contacted his coworkers, and he thought it was going too far. But I just wanted to confirm my doubts since I did not want to be in a relationship with someone who was doing anything illegal, so I don't think that I did anything wrong. Anyway, the day that we broke up, I was really depressed, so I did not tell anyone about it, and I thought that I would contact Rachel later on and inform her. But the next day when I woke up, I had a bunch of texts from Rachel, and she had told me that after we broke up, Leo had reached out to her and asked her to accompany her on a trip to the vacation home that he had purchased. And he wanted to gift it to her because he wanted her to know exactly how serious he was about her. Apparently, He had confessed that breaking up with me had just made him realize that he had kind of fallen for Rachel. And even while I was dumping him, the only thing that he could think about was whether she would be willing to see him again or not. He did not want to risk losing her, so he contacted her immediately afterward, and long story short, they were now together. Rachel confessed that she had also always had a bit of a thing for Leo but never made a move because he was my boyfriend and she did not want to be a homewrecker. But now, since we were over, she thought that it would be fine for her to get together with him. In all the texts that she had sent me, there was no mention of the reason why we had broken up, so I knew for a fact that Leo had not told her that we had broken things off because I had figured out that he was involved in shady stuff. I immediately called Rachel up because even though I was kind of annoyed that she had chosen to get together with my ex-boyfriend just one day after we had broken up, I still felt like it was my duty to warn her about the kind of guy that he was since she was my sister. She picked up the call, and as soon as I started explaining why Leo and I had broken up, she told me that she just did not want to hear it. Apparently, Leo had taught her well, and she had been brainwashed into believing that I was going to try and break them up because I was jealous. But Leo had told her not to believe anything I was going to tell her because it was something that I was trying to do since I wanted him back. So she cut me off before I could even get into why we had broken up, and I tried to explain it to her several times on that phone call, but she just kept cutting me off. Initially, both of us were trying to be polite to each other, but eventually, she just snapped. She started screaming at me and said that she could understand that I was upset that her ex and her sister were now together, and it had only been a day since my breakup, but they liked each other, and they were not going to let me get in the way of it anymore since she had won the lottery and I was just jealous. And I lost my temper at that point as well, and I told her that she was acting like a sellout just because Leo was willing to give her the vacation home that he had purchased as a gift. I told her that she would face the consequences of this herself and that I was done trying to help her. Then I hung up and blocked both of them everywhere. But even after I blocked her, she sent me a couple of photos from the vacation home a few days afterward and even went to the extent of creating a fake account for this purpose. I was very upset because ever since our parents had passed away, Rachel and I were all that we had, and now she had passed me over for a vacation home and a relationship with my ex. It was just disheartening, and I was so upset about it that I didn't even go to work for a couple of days that week. Anyway, eventually I did recover and I resumed my normal life. I tried not to think about them too much because it would only hurt me and tried to move on from all of this. And then yesterday, Rachel finally came to her senses, I guess, and came to me. I had blocked her, so she had to use her friend's phone to call me up and ask me if I would be willing to see her. I told her that I was not interested since she had made her choice, but she was weeping on the phone so hard that I had to tell her that she could come see me just to get the conversation over with. 2 weeks have passed since my breakup, and I thought this was pretty quick for her to figure out as reality. But yesterday when I came back home from work, she was waiting at my door with tears in her eyes, and she started sobbing as soon as she saw me. She told me that apparently Leo had been involved in some sort of fraud because he had falsified certain documents after his rich uncle passed away, and had made it seem like his uncle had left everything to him in his will. And he had been about to get away with it since his uncle did not really have any family and he had passed very suddenly from a heart attack, so there was nobody to contest the will or challenge the validity of it. But one of his cousins had been able to find the real document, and in it, it stated that his uncle had wanted to leave all his assets divided equally among his nephews and nieces. So Leo had been caught in his lies, and now he was being investigated for fraud. And since just a couple of days ago he had transferred the vacation home property to Rachel, she was being investigated by extension as well. She said that she was really afraid of going to jail, and she needed my help, even though I'm not sure what exactly I could help her with. So she explained to me that when the time came, I just had to testify for her in court and say that she had no idea about the means through which Leo had attained all of these things. This was the bare minimum that I could do for her, and she wanted me to promise her that I would help her. And obviously I was going to, but in the moment I just felt like she was taking me for granted. So I said that I would have to think about it because she had behaved very horribly with me. She was shocked to hear me say that and told me that I was being petty because there was a very real risk of her going to jail here and I shouldn't be playing right now. So I told her that I was serious, and that's when she started freaking out on me, saying that it was my fault anyway that she was involved in any of this because if I had just told her the truth about Leo, then she wouldn't have started dating him anyway. So now I apparently owed it to her to help her out, and I couldn't back out. I got really pissed off because I did not owe her anything, and I told her as much and we started fighting. She told me that she was going to tell the cops that I had been with him up until 2 weeks ago, and she knew for a fact that he had given me a lot of expensive gifts, so she was going to get me in trouble if I did not help her out. But I told her that I had gathered all those gifts and returned them to him just 1 week back, and he had taken it all back very happily, so I was in the clear anyway. We argued for a bit, and then she just stomped her foot and called me a bunch of names before leaving. I thought that the way I behaved was pretty reasonable, but then I spoke to a couple of my friends and told them about this, and they said that I should keep everything aside and tell her that I'm going to testify for her, even if I decide to cut her off after that, because this is a really serious situation that she's involved in. And of course, she doesn't appreciate the fact that I'm still trying to get back at her. I don't feel like I should be obliged to tell her that I'm going to help her out, but I feel like my friends also have a point since fraud is a pretty huge deal, and I guess I do have to keep certain personal grudges aside for the time being. But also, I feel like she's been taking me for granted, and I didn't like the fact that she started blaming me for the situation she was in because I had tried to explain it to her several times, but she just kept cutting me off on the phone call and kept saying that I was jealous. I feel very confused. So Aita for telling my sister that I'm going to think about it when she asked me if I was going to testify in court in her favor? Date 1. Hi, so people in the comments had a lot of mixed opinions on my original post, and I'm going to have to say it really confused me a lot as well. I had no idea what to do or what to say to her until today. Just decided that I was not going to say anything. If she reaches out to me again to ask me if I'm going to testify for her or not, I'm going to say yes, but until then, I don't think I need to reach out to her and talk to her. After all, she did not speak to me for the past 2 weeks until she was in trouble, so I want her to stay out of jail more for the sake of our family reputation rather than for herself. I have spoken to my aunt as well, and I have explained the entire situation to her, and she told me that she was going to reach out to Rachel and put her in touch with a good lawyer. I'm guessing she already has one, but nevertheless, I'm pretty sure that some help is not going to hurt. So I know for a fact that her situation is going to be taken care of, but emotionally, I'm going to distance myself from her. The past 2 weeks were really hurtful for me, and I don't think I will ever be able to forget that and just move on. If she was in my place, I'm pretty certain that she wouldn't have been able to do that either. So anyway, I've decided that if she contacts me again, I'm going to agree to help her out, but like my friend said, I'm going to cut her out of my life after that. It is going to be painful, I know that for a fact. It's going to be really very difficult for me because my entire life I've taken pride in being a good big sister to my baby sister. But she's not really a baby anymore. She can make her own decisions, and she made all the wrong ones. I can't in good conscience allow myself to have the same kind of relationship with her that we used to. So thank you so much for all the comments and support that you guys have shown me. The opinions were mixed, there was a lot of advice, and I know some people will be disappointed with the decisions that I have made, but my mind is made up now. It's been 5 days since I last spoke to Rachel, and after that, she has not reached out to me. Some of you had even been asking about Leo and whether he had contacted me after our breakup, and thankfully no, he hadn't. But for him, I don't feel bad at all. He totally deserves this. Update 2. So it's been around 8 days since Rachel visited me, and 2 days back, she visited my aunt. A lot of people in the comments have been claiming that my aunt was not a good parental figure for us since I had had to raise and be there for my sister on my own, and I didn't even get to go to college. But I would just like to come to my aunt's defense right now. Like I had said in my original post, my aunt was really busy with her work back when we moved in with her, and she had only done the bare minimum for us, but that was a huge deal. Our grandparents live out of state, and in order to move in with them, we both have to uproot our entire lives. The only person who lived here and was willing to take us was our aunt, but she was also really focused on her career, and there was nothing wrong with that. So yeah, maybe she wasn't an ideal parent, but that's because she was not our parent in the literal sense of the word. But she took care of us when nobody else was able to, so we obviously keep in touch with her and we like her, contrary to what most people in the comments believe. Anyway, my aunt had reached out to Rachel the day that I had explained the situation to her, and she had offered to help her out by putting her in touch with a good lawyer. Rachel did not respond to her message for a couple of days until she visited her 2 days ago, and she had a lot to say about me since she was pretty much still blaming me for the situation that she was caught up in right now. My aunt tried to distract her from that several times and even tried to explain to her that this was not my fault since I had called her up and tried to expose Leo several times. But she was the one who was not ready to hear it. But Rachel was really convinced that this was my fault and even said that if she had not been ready to hear me out back then, Then I should have put it in a text and sent it to her instead of blocking her. She had been claiming that I did all of this on purpose because I was mad at her for getting together with Leo and I wanted her to get in trouble. It's just so ridiculous. And I was really pissed off when my aunt told me all of this. Rachel was seriously obsessed with blaming this entire situation on me, and I thought it was really unfair, especially when she wasn't even supposed to be there to talk to my aunt about me. She was there to talk about a lawyer and fix the problem that she was in. If she really wanted somebody to blame, she should look within herself and also the guy she was supposedly so into. So after my aunt told me the kind of conversation that she had with Rachel, I started feeling very dicey about my decision to help her out in case it came down to me. I'm still on the fence about whether I want to testify for her or not. Anyway, my aunt has told me that she has put Rachel in touch with one of her friends who is a pretty accomplished attorney, and she's in good hands, I guess. That way, I don't really have to feel much guilt about not wanting to stand up for her. And it's not just this particular incident, to be honest. I've been hearing from a bunch of people that Rachel has been putting up a lot of posts on social media that are really shady towards me, since I don't think she would be trying to throw shade at anyone else by posting about how manipulative and cruel abusive sisters or family members can be. And seriously, does she really think that I have been abusive to her? I literally cannot think of a single incident in the past that would justify this kind of outlook towards me. A bunch of people from our family have even contacted me to ask me what's going on between me and Rachel, and I have maintained my dignity. I have not told them anything apart from the fact that we have been having issues, but I'm pretty sure that if it comes down to her and if people start asking her, she's not going to keep her mouth shut and is going to try and make me look like the villain. It really bothers me that she's behaving this way over something that is not even my fault. After my conversation with my aunt, I'm pretty sure that she was even trying to get my aunt to choose between us, but she was clever about it. My aunt is not easily swayed, and she was also very disturbed with the way Rachel had been acting when she visited her. All she's doing right now is alienating the people that were actually there for her, nothing else. It's not going to take a lot for her to just admit that she had been wrong about everything, mostly about Leo. She could have just apologized and made life easier for everyone, including herself, but I guess she's too proud of herself. It just sucks to think that I gave up so much of my life and fun for her sake since I wanted to become successful so I could be able to support my sister. I don't think she even remembers that because if she did, she would be grateful. But it's not like I can force people to show gratitude for everything that I have done. It just has to be something that comes from within, and if it doesn't, that just speaks volumes about the kind of person that she has turned into, and I'm glad that I don't have to be part of her life anymore. Update 3. I had really not expected Rachel to contact me again after everything that she said about me to my aunt. I mean, clearly she blames me for this entire fiasco, and she's not going to go back on her word. I heard from my aunt that the procedure has already started, and she's probably going to get summoned by court in a couple of weeks. So far, it's just Leo who is involved, and all has to do is prove that she had nothing to do with any of this. And that means that in a couple of weeks, she might need my help. I'm guessing that's why she came to visit me again today, and this time she was much nicer than the last time. She brought flowers and chocolates and an apology note, and when I opened the door, she instantly told me that she had not been thinking straight back then and had said a lot of things that she did not really mean, but she was in a very bad space metal, which is why she had been acting out like that, and she wanted me to forgive her. She told me that she could totally understand why I wanted to take my own time to come to a decision about whether I wanted to testify for her or not, because obviously what she had done to me was not right, and it was completely justified for me to be upset with her. But now she really needed my help, and she was counting on everyone to bail her out of this problem. She handed me all the chocolates and stuff that she had bought for me, but I refused and gave it right back to her. I told her that the only reason that she was here was because she needed my help, not because she was genuinely sorry from the bottom of her heart. I also mentioned that I had spoken to our aunt, and she had told me everything about what she had said when she visited her, so I knew that she really held me responsible for what was going on with her, and I did not need her apology anymore. I was quite fine staying out of her life indefinitely. I knew that she did not mean what she was saying, but that applied to right now as well, since I knew that she did not mean her apology and she only wanted me to help her out. She started getting upset, but I guess she realized that it would get her nowhere. So she just told me that she actually did mean her apology and she wanted to make things right with me. But if I still did not want to testify for her, that was my decision, and she would have to respect it. So then she left, but she made sure to leave the chocolate, flowers, and the note at my doorstep. I feel kind of bad, but this is for the best. I know that. I'm really hoping that it doesn't even come to a point where I have to testify for her and she gets bailed out by her lawyer without me because I'm still confused about what to do. Things are just really weird right now. Update for Hi, so Rachel was acquitted. Thankfully, her lawyer found it very easy to prove that she had nothing to do with any of the fraud and that it was completely on Leo, not her. I guess Leo had just figured out that it would be better for him to transfer some of the property to other people. Like he had transferred the title of his new luxury car to his mother to shift suspicion and act like he had nothing to do with any of this. I don't know what exactly he was thinking, but he had used Rachel, and I'm thankful that he broke up with me when he did because otherwise, it could have just as easily been me in her place. I'm also thankful for the fact that it did not come to a situation where I had to be summoned in order to testify for or against anyone. I don't know what's going to happen with Leo. He's probably going to get convicted because all the evidence is stacked against him, and his cousins are putting up a united front against him. One of them had even contacted me to ask me if I would be willing to testify against him if the time came, and I said yes because I just want to see him suffer the consequences of his actions. But it hasn't come to that yet, so let's see how this unfolds. I'm just thankful that Rachel is not in trouble anymore, but that does not mean that everything is fine between us all of a sudden. She and I are still not on talking terms, but she has kept in touch with our aunt. I guess she needs somebody to be there for her since most of the family has been wary of her after all the posts that she had made against me. Everyone knew how much I had sacrificed for her and how much I had done for her, so her behavior has been very ungrateful, and they did not even need to know what exactly happened to know that she was in the wrong. Anyway, I don't have a problem even if people continue to speak to her. I just want to be happy with my life, and I want the same for her as well. It's just that I don't want to be in touch with her right now. Maybe someday we will be able to fix the situation and go back to the way we used to be, but right now this is just too recent for me to move on from. Here's to hoping that things will be fine one day again, but until then, I'm good on my own. Now on to the next story. Story 11. Caught my girlfriend secretly dating her stepbrother behind my back all these years. So I exposed their affair in front of everyone at our college graduation banquet. My girlfriend and I both met during our junior year of college. We went to a small school and it was hard not to notice everyone on campus. I'd seen her around from time to time and I thought she was attractive, however. I never had a reason to go talk to her. We both ended up in the same writing class during the first semester of our junior year. As soon as I saw her, I sat down next to her and struck up a conversation. We ended up hitting it off and we workshopped a lot of things together for the class. A few weeks into the semester, I made a move on her and she seemed glad that I did. The first summer that we were apart was difficult because we weren't used to long distance. We lived about 4 hours away from each other, so we weren't able to see each other very often. We talked every day and we ended up making a couple of trips to each other to hang out over the summer. When the fall semester of our senior year started, we were very happy to finally be back together. Everything was great between us. When we started, I didn't notice anything strange going on between us, so I was maybe a little oblivious to some things. In hindsight, I can see how she wanted to hang out with me less and was using her course load as an excuse. I had seen her schedule at the beginning of the semester and she had a relatively light course load. She had a job, but she only worked part-time. There was definitely time for her to go on more dates with me or spend more time with me. She just didn't want to. Whenever we were together, she would be on her phone a lot and she was often pretty secretive about what she was doing on it. Things continued like that all the way until the spring semester. I had brought up a couple of times how I was feeling, but she assured me both times that she wanted to be with me and that she was just busy or stressed. One night, I texted her and asked her if I could come over to her room and spend the night with her. It was a Friday night and I knew that she didn't work in the morning and I just wanted to be with my girlfriend. She replied a few minutes later and told me that she had a migraine from looking at a computer for too long and was about to go to sleep. I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw a notification that my girlfriend was online. She told me she was going to sleep because she was looking at a screen all day and had a headache. I figured that she was lying to me about that and just didn't want to be with me because she was scrolling on Instagram. It was painful to have that realization, but I think it was something that I kind of needed. I was a little upset about it, so my roommate asked me about what was going on. I explained everything to him and he told me that it sounded like she was over the relationship already. Then he casually mentioned that she was probably already talking to someone else. I didn't see the correlation right away, but he encouraged me to look into it. I didn't really think much about it right away, but after a few days of stewing on what he said, I decided that maybe it would be worth looking into. She really didn't want to spend a lot of time with me and she was on her phone quite a bit, being secretive about it. It made sense that she could have been hiding something from me. I looked online for some clues about how to tell if someone's cheating, and I evaluated my relationship against those. I took a mental note of what her Snap score was, if she was online after she told me she was going to sleep, and how often she was turning me down when I asked if we could go on dates or be together. From everything I found, signs are pointing to her possibly being with someone else. One weekend, we made plans to go to a concert together. I bought the tickets and everything. She backed out at the last minute and told me that she had to work. She never worked on Saturdays, so right away it seemed like a lie to me. I told her that I was okay with it and that I would bring my roommate along to the concert with me instead. I told him what happened and he got it in my head that she was canceling to be with another guy. He convinced me of that and I was pretty frustrated and anxious about everything. I checked her Snap score while we were on our way to the concert and saw that it had been increasing while she was supposed to be at work. I could also tell through the maps on Snapchat that she was at a restaurant in the city, not at her job near our college campus. My roommate decided that instead of going to the concert, we were going to go see what was going on in that restaurant. When we got there, she was clearly on a date with a guy. They were sitting next to each other and he had his arms around her while they were laughing and getting very cozy. We even saw them kiss a few times. I was heartbroken to see that everything my roommate had been saying was true. She had been cheating on me and lying to me throughout the year. I didn't know how long it had been going on, but she had been behaving a certain way for a while. While we were waiting, my roommate started looking through her social media profiles to try to figure out who the guy was. He put the pieces together relatively quickly and found out that the guy she was on the date with was her stepbrother. I knew that her parents were divorced and her mother had married pretty hastily during the spring semester of our junior year. However, I had never met her family. We hadn't been dating for that long and her family never visited for family weekend or anything like that on campus. I was shocked that she was cheating on me with her stepbrother of all people. I told my roommate that I was going to confront her the following day and end everything with us. He was the one who convinced me to go about it a different way. He helped me plan how I was going to get revenge on them both. Her family didn't come to visit for small things, but I knew that they were coming in for our graduation ceremony. I pretended like everything was normal with us up until then. Every year, the day before our graduation ceremony, our university held a large banquet for the students and their family members. My girlfriend and I had planned on attending that together with our family so we could all meet each other. Everything was going very well at first. Everybody was getting along and I was honestly drinking a little too much wine. The president of the university was scheduled to give a speech at the dinner, so there was a live microphone on the stage in the room. I was feeling a little confident, so I made my way over to the microphone. The faculty around me were a little surprised, but they didn't stop me right away. They probably should have. I started off by congratulating all of my fellow classmates on making it through the year to get to graduation. I turned my attention to my girlfriend and many people in the room turned and looked at her while I was speaking. At first, it seemed like I was just talking about how lovely she was. Then I mentioned how I was surprised to see her on a date with her stepbrother. The room went silent when I brought that up. Everybody was taking in the gravity of what I'd said. They were both shaking their heads and denying it. I explained that I saw them kissing each other and how she was cheating on me with him throughout the entire year. People were pulling out their phones to record what I was saying, but I was ushered away from the microphone by one of the faculty members before I could get into a lot of the details. However, her mother and stepfather were asking her a lot of questions and she was trying to answer them. My parents pulled me out of the room and asked me about why I would embarrass her that way. I was just laughing and I ended up leaving. My girlfriend texted me later that night and told me about how much I humiliated her in front of the entire class. I didn't really care. She had been lying to me and treating me like I was garbage for an entire year and I finally found out why. I thought she deserved to be a little bit embarrassed about everything. Our graduation ceremony was the following day and people were still talking about the dinner. I could see that my girlfriend was embarrassed and could feel people talking about her behind her back throughout the entire ceremony. I really think I ruined that for her. That was a few years ago, but I am now over what happened. I realized that not everybody is going to be the way that she was. However, I am now very aware of signs of cheating and I keep an eye out for that in my relationships. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.